like to welcome you all to the Democratic National Convention roll call.
Donald Trump called me that woman from Michigan as an insult. Being a woman from Michigan is a badge of honor. We've all lived through a lot of history over the past few years. Floods and fires, an attempted coup, a plot, and a pandemic. It's exhausting. We don't know what the next 4 years will bring, but what we do know is this. Through it all, your life won't stop. You're gonna have to get to work, pick up the kids, and pay your bills. And then one day, when you're just trying to get everyone out the door, a news alert goes off. Something happened. Something hit the fan. You'll ask, is my family gonna be okay? And then you'll ask, who the hell is in charge? What if it's him? Kamala Harris, she gets us. She sees us. She is us.
The presidential election is unique in several ways. First of all, it's the greatest job interview for the greatest job in the world. Secondly, the Constitution says we, the people, get to do the hiring. And the third thing is that every 4 years, we get to change the requirements for the job. So here's what I'm thinking, because I try to apply this in every election. Will this president take us backward or forward? Will this president give our kids a brighter future? Will this president bring us together or tear us apart? Will the president increase the peace, security, and stability and freedom that we enjoy and extend it to others as we can? And every 4 years, the people come up to candidates and they say, as they're saying now, here are our problems, solve them. Here are our opportunities, seize them. Here are our fears, ease them. Here are our dreams, help them come true. So in 2024, we got a pretty clear choice, it seems to me. Kamala Harris for the people, and the other guy who's proved that he's about me, myself, and I. You're going to have a hard time believing this, but so help me, I triple-checked it. Since the end of the Cold War in 1989, America has created about 51 million new jobs. I swear I checked this 3 times. Even I couldn't believe it. What's the score? Democrats 50, Republicans 1.
I can tell you this. I don't blame Donald Trump for not wanting to debate Kamala. I've been married to a black woman for 40 years, and I ain't won one debate. I'm owing $93,000. Now, of course, Trump is saying that Kamala isn't black. I guarantee you this, Kamala's been black a lot longer than Trump's been a Republican. And if he keeps sliding in the polls the way he is, the only way he can keep Kamala out of the White House is if he buys it and refuses to rent it to her. Of course, Kamala's getting broad support. They got black men for Kamala, white men for Kamala, Latinos and Asians for Kamala. They even have Republicans for Kamala. Kamala knows the truth about the American dream, that hard work is not enough. Hard work alone is not enough to succeed. You need access and opportunity. And she knows that some folks are often denied those very things. She will give each and every one of us a fair shot in life. But I have to admit, I didn't always believe that. I mean, if you told me the 15-year-old me would be on stage supporting a prosecutor and a teacher, there is no way that I would have believed you. But because of that, I made assumptions about Kamala's record. And I often repeated them to a lot of people. Then one day, Kamala invited me to her house. She put her hand on my shoulder, and she asked me to do some research. Something I had never done. Something a lot of people I know had never done before. Imagine attacking someone's character without a single Google search. So I did what I should have done in the first place. I learned that she had done for us exactly what she promised to. I believe that your apology should be as loud as your accusation, and I'm here apologizing in front of the whole damn world.
Cutting our health care, taking away our freedom to control our bodies, the freedom to become a mother through IVF like I did, those things are not going to improve the health outcomes of our wives, mothers, and daughters. Shutting down the Department of Education, banning our books, none of that will prepare our kids for the future. Demonizing our children for being who they are and loving who they love. Look, that doesn't make anybody's life better.
We're facing an inflection point. One of those rare moments in history when the decisions we make now will determine the fate of our nation and the world for decades to come. That's not hyperbole, I mean it literally. We're in a battle for the very soul of America. I ran for president in 2020 because of what I saw in Charlottesville in August of 2017. Extremists coming out of the woods, carrying torches, their veins bulging from their necks, carrying Nazi swastikas and chanting the same exact anti-Semitic bile that was heard in Germany in the early 30s. Neo-Nazis, white supremacists, the Ku Klux Klan, so emboldened by a president then in the White House that they saw as an ally. They didn't even bother to wear their hoods. Hate was on the march in America. Old ghosts and new garments, stirring up the oldest divisions, stoking the oldest fears, giving oxygen to the oldest forces that they long sought to tear apart America. When the president was asked what he thought had happened, Donald Trump said, and I quote, "There are very fine people on both sides. My God." That's what he said. That is what he said and what he meant.
So here, this is the part, clip and save it and send it to your undecided relatives so they know. If you're a middle-class family, Kamala Harris is going to cut your taxes. If you're getting squeezed by prescription drug prices, Kamala Harris is going to take on Big Pharma. If you're hoping to buy a home, Kamala Harris is going to help make it more affordable. And no matter who you are, Kamala Harris is going to stand up and fight for your freedom to live the life that you want to lead.
My entire career, I've only had one client, the people. And so, on behalf of the people, on behalf of every American, regardless of party, race, gender, or the language your grandmother speaks, on behalf of my mother and everyone who has ever set out on their own unlikely journey, on behalf of Americans like the people I grew up with, I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
In Kamala Harris, we have a chance to elect a president who is for the middle class because she is from the middle class. She understands the urgency of rent checks and groceries and prescriptions. She is as committed to our reproductive and civil rights as she is to taking on corporate greed. In Kamala Harris, I see a leader who understands. I see a leader with a real commitment to a better future for working families. And Chicago, we have to help her win. Because we know that Donald Trump would sell this country for $1 if it meant lining his own pockets and greasing the palms of his Wall Street friends. And I, for one, am tired of hearing about how a two-bit union buster thinks of himself as more of a patriot than the woman who fights every single day to lift working people out from under the boots of greed, trampling on our way of life.
J.D. Vance is one of those guys who thinks if you don't live the life that he has in mind for you, then you don't count. Someone who said that if you don't have kids, you have, quote, no physical commitment to the future of this country. Right now, the other side is appealing to what is smallest within you. They're telling you that greatness comes from going back to the past. They're telling you that anyone different from you is a threat. They're telling you that your neighbor or nephew or daughter who disagrees with you politically isn't just wrong, but is now the enemy. I believe in a better politics, one that finds us at our most decent and open and brave, the kind of politics that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are offering. And as you have felt these many days, That kind of politics also just feels better to be part of.
Thank you, America, for raising your voice and using your vote. A vote is a kind of prayer for the world we desire for ourselves and for our children, and our prayers are stronger when we pray together. The day after my January 5th election, he instigated an insurrection, all driven by the big lie. But behind the big lie was an even bigger lie. It is the lie that this increasingly diverse American electorate does not get to determine the future of the country. The lie and the logic of January 6th is a sickness. It is a kind of cancer that then metastasized into dozens of voter suppression laws all across our country. And we must be vigilant tonight because these anti-democratic forces are at work right now in Georgia and all across our country. And the question is, who will heal the land? Kamala Harris and Tim Walz represent the new way forward. We're not going back.
When I first got to Congress, I wasn't sure I made the right decision. The Chaos Caucus couldn't elect a speaker, and the Oversight Committee was unhinged. I was going through all of this when I visited the Vice President's residence for the first time. As I approached Vice President Harris for our official photo, she turned to me and asked, "What's wrong?" Mind you, we'd never met, but she saw right through me. She saw the distress. I immediately began crying. And the most powerful woman in the world wiped my tears and listened.
My friends, the future is here. I wish my mother and Kamala's mother could see us. They would say, keep going. Shirley and Jerry would say, keep going. Women fighting for reproductive health care are saying, keep going. Families building better lives. Parents stretching to afford child care. Young people struggling to pay their rent. They're all asking us to keep going. So, with faith in each other and joy in our hearts, let's send Kamala Harris and Tim Walz to the White House.
The other side knows it's easier to play on people's fears and cynicism, always has been. They will tell you that government is inherently corrupt, that sacrifice and generosity are for suckers. And since the game is rigged, it's okay to take what you want and just look after your own. That's the easy path. We have a different task. Our job is to convince people that democracy can actually deliver. And in doing that, we can't just point to what we've already accomplished. We can't just rely on the ideas of the past. We need to chart a new way forward.
Kamala Harris can't be bought, and she can't be bossed around. Now, I first met Kamala in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crash. The banks had flat out broken laws, cheated people, and stolen homes. Millions of Americans had lost their jobs, their savings, their homes. Now, I was setting up the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, go CFPB. Kamala was protecting families as California's Attorney General, and Donald was scamming students at Trump University and trying to make money off people losing their homes. Kamala Harris stepped up. She enforced the law, she fought the giant banks, and she delivered billions of dollars of help for families. And that is the difference between a criminal and a prosecutor.
My mom and my father didn't aspire to be wealthy. In fact, they were suspicious of folks who took more than they needed. They understood that it wasn't enough for their kids to thrive if everyone else around us was drowning. Those were the values my mother poured into me until her very last breath. Kamala Harris and I built our lives on those same foundational values.
Trump loved to fan racial flames. On the other side is a woman that I've walked with in Selma, Alabama to commemorate the 59th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. Kamala Harris spoke to me that day about unity and passing bills. In every job she's had, she has consistently committed to making government work for those of us who've been disadvantaged. All Donald Trump has been consistent about is making himself richer and sowing division to get that done.
A lot of Americans don't believe government can help. And as we gather here tonight, the people who will decide this election are asking a very simple question. Who will fight for me? Who's thinking about my future, about my children's future, about our future together? One thing is for certain, Donald Trump is not losing sleep over that question.
35 years ago, my friends and I were in prison for a crime we did not commit. Our youth was stolen from us. Every day as we walked into courtroom, people screamed at us, threatened us because of Donald Trump. He spent $85,000 on a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for our execution. We were innocent kids, but we served a total of 41 years in prison. Reverend Al Sharpton stood with us. Now, I'm proud to stand with him today.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Cutting Through the Culture. I am one of your hosts tonight. My name is Quisha King, and it's going to be quite a good show. Welcome to the chat. Make sure you hit the like button, share this video, subscribe to the channel, become a member. Make sure you support so we can keep this thing going. All I have to say is this. Let me see. Jasmine Crockett needs some new lashes. D.L. Hughley is not funny. Barack and Michelle are not oppressed. Biden is still lying. Tim Walz wants to do some very strange things to little kids, in my opinion. And Kamala Harris is a communist. With that being said, let's get right on into it. I'm going to start this off with my good friend, Mr. Teaching Chuck. Welcome, sir. How are you?
Lord Jesus. Lord Jesus, help me. Help me, then help them. Or maybe help them first. I don't know. I'm trying. I like you said, Keisha, you just touched on a few things. You know, we've made a decision amongst the four of us to keep our intros short. So I won't go into anything in detail starting off. It's hard to even know where to begin, to be honest. So I guess I'll just point out the one thing that really bugged me the most. Well, just two things, and then I'll be done. Wall Street Friends, I think, was it Warnock who talked about oh no, it was Alexandria Occasional Cortex who said that Donald Trump just wants to make money to please his rich buddies on Wall Street, to line their pockets and line his pockets. And like I say, she knows that most Democrat voters, they say, Chuck, you shouldn't say bad things. You shouldn't call people names. That doesn't help. They'll just tune you out. They won't listen to what you have to say. I really don't. I really don't give a damn, because I'm a fighter anyway. I'm not here to play kumbaya with anybody. I'm here. I'm here to win. If you got a problem with what I have to say, then you need to look in the mirror, and you shouldn't look at me. Because they're the ones who are insulting your intelligence. When you think Wall Street, you think wealth. You see Donald Trump, you see a billionaire, you put two and two together, and that's the way most people's minds work because they're simplistic like that. They look for the simplest things as quickly as they possibly can, make an assessment so that they can move on. They don't want to invest much time in getting to the bottom of things if it requires a great deal of effort. But everybody who knows just a smidget about politics knows that the entirety of Wall Street is in the back pocket of the Democrat Party. Everybody who knows politics knows that. The money is with the Democrat Party. Big money is not with the Republican Party. Let's be clear. But anyway, maybe we'll get into that some more. And Warnock is talking about the big lie and all the stuff about the election being stolen. The election was, in fact, stolen. The fact of the matter is they don't want to have the debate. They don't want to have the discussion. And no judge worth their weight would even look at the issue because they were trying to feign this objectivity to say, well, courts weren't created by the Constitution to get involved in political matters. And so I am not one who runs away from this debate about whether or not the election was stolen. This was your state, Mr. Warnock, where we went to bed that Tuesday. Donald Trump was up almost 200,000 votes. And then the very next day, all of a sudden, he's down 13,000 votes in the middle of the night. How the hell did that happen? Talking about some pipe burst that never happened. We found that out, too. We got you all on tape dead to rights, but you're telling me not to believe my lying eyes when I saw you steal the election in real time. So don't tell me I'm crazy. Again, you don't want to have the discussion. And people say, well, are you trying to say that's the 2024? Because the minute you admit it or the minute you say, yes, I do believe that, and all of a sudden your credibility just goes out the window like you're the one who's crazy. But anyway, that really ticked me off. And one last thing, that damn Central Park 5 lie.
Oh my gosh, that was brutal.
Maybe we'll get to that in the discussion because I myself, this may not be a personal kind of thing for either of you on the panel, but I am going to expose this lie if I can at some point during this show. The man you saw there speaking was a man named Corey Wise. And you may think to yourself, well, this life, we went to prison, maybe a life of drug use, whatever. Maybe his brain just kind of, because you saw the way he was speaking, and Chad kind of looked at even Reverend Al Sharpton, who's never met a teleprompter that didn't disagree with him. He even had to look and say, this guy can barely talk. Well, Corey Wise has been talking like that ever since he was a teenage boy. If anyone has even bothered to watch the interrogation like I have, those boys were as guilty as the day is long. Yes, they are guilty. And the reason why I'm so adamant about this, because you do have some conservatives even who say, yeah, I do get it. I understand police brutality, all this anti-police stuff. I'm not with that. But sometimes the police do get things wrong. Sometimes they do overstep. Sometimes they do. But the Central Park 5 is not one of those situations. We have been completely blindsided by propaganda in the form of a dim-witted, deliberately deceptive Netflix documentary that was used as a weapon, as a tool to attack Donald Trump and Republicans and conservatives by and large. Corey Wise knows what he did. He knows exactly what he did. Corey Wise, Yusef Salaam, Anton McQuay, Kevin Richardson. I know all 5 of them. I know not just them, but I know the other young boys who were with them in the park, who too were sat down and questioned. There are over 200,000 pages in that case file docket. Not saying that I want over all 200,000 pages, but I can guarantee you that the Central Park 5 participated in the rape of Patricia Miley, and they also participated in the attempted murder of John Laughlin that very same night. But I hope I'll be able to get to that at some point during the conversation, because he is a liar. And the fact that he can sit there and pretend like he didn't do anything wrong, God have mercy on him.
I definitely am interested to hear about that, because that's something that constantly comes up in regards to Donald Trump. So hold that. I definitely want to get into that. Let's get Mr. Blanche Robinson up here to get his take on the montage. What's up, Blanche?
What's up, y'all?
What'd you think?
It was disgusting. I think it's just a problem when, people can get on stage and just lie and nobody question it. I think it's dangerous. I think moving forward in the country, it's going to get real bad if lies don't get checked. And so these folks just getting on stage, just saying anything, and nobody even, no fact checkers, all the fact checkers took off work that day. Nobody fact checks anything. They just get to say what they want to say and no one questions it. So I just think it's dangerous because I know with given the power, those lies become people thrown in camps and execution. So again, I'm very big on truth and context, and I just, people say anything. Chuck mentioned, the guy Wise talking, and I'm just like, the whole thing with that is they keep trying to blame Trump for it. Trump wasn't the DA, he wasn't the police, Trump had nothing to do with that. Like, y'all keep saying Trump, but it wasn't to do with Trump. Then I read the letter on live today, and nowhere in the letter does he call for a death penalty for them. Nowhere does he mention them in the ad in the paper. He don't even mention them. So I'm like, all you gotta do is Google, like they said, Google, and you'll find it. It's funny to me that now everybody wants you to Google all this stuff, but just 4 years ago they said shut up and take the shot. Now all of a sudden, now everybody wants you to be a researcher. Everybody wants you to do your research, due diligence, look up Kamala's record, all this stuff. But just 4 short years ago, they said shut up and take it because we said so. And so I don't know. I think the Democrats really control the market. If we can talk, they control the media, they control everything. They control Hollywood, they control the schools, they control. It's literally a lopsided, uneven fight. But the fact that Trump has this much support lets you know that there are at least a lot of folks in the country, maybe even half of the folks in the country, aren't buying it. So that means they have to either turn the heat up. They got to get more drastic and more diabolical and more crazy, or they're going to lose. Because with this much propaganda and it's still a fight, let me know that they're in trouble if that's the case. But again, they cheated last time, so they're probably going to cheat this time. So,
Yeah. Oh, no, they preferred to call it, I think it was Time Magazine. They said they were fortifying the election. That's what they want to call it. They didn't come right out and say we cheated. I mean, they really did. If you read the article, they say fortified. So if you say fortified, I guess it's okay. But otherwise known as they cheated. Let's go ahead and bring up our fearless leader, Mr. Chad O. Jackson. Chad, you do this every week. You put together these montages that literally has everybody boiling. Thank you for doing it, because it helps us to get some great conversation out of it.
For sure.
Your own montage.
How's everybody doing tonight? Keisha, Blanche, Chuck.
Very good.
You doing all right? Folks, if y'all haven't already, please like the stream. Please share the stream. Let's get the word out, because this is going to be a good conversation tonight. So please like the stream. Yeah, I mean, the thing, because we actually, Blanche, Crystal and I, we covered just the Michelle Obama and Barack Obama portion of the DNC this past Thursday. And I said it then, and I'll say it now. The thing that stuck out to me most was just the gaslighting that was a thread throughout the entire DNC that was present in every speech, just the amount of gaslighting that took place there. They gaslit when they mentioned January 6th time and again, namely the fact that, we all know what happened during the 2020 election. There was a lot of funny business going on, and more than half the country was asking that those who are responsible for possibly stealing the election be held accountable, or at least brought to justice and scrutinized and asked questions and so on and so forth. But the media said there's nothing to see here. Many of the courts said there's nothing to see here. And not only that, they tried to make more than half the country look crazy, or feel as though we're the ones who are insane for saying, hey, something's not right about this. Something looks very strange and fishy about this. And they proceeded as if there's nothing to see here. CNN, MSNBC, ABC, PBS, Fox News, all of them were in one chorus in terms of saying, nope, Joe Biden won it fair and square. There's nothing to see here. And of course, they did so to the extent that people felt it was necessary to take matters into their own hands. And that's why many patriots went to the Capitol there on January 6th, and many of them marched down to the Capitol building, and only a very small percentage of them entered the White House, or I'm sorry, entered the Capitol building. A very, very small percentage of it. Wasn't an insurrection at all. But of course, they're gaslighting because they are the ones, it wasn't Trump's fault, it was their fault. They are the ones who were complicit in stealing this election, and then they want to make more than half the country seem crazy for calling them out on it. So that's gaslighting. They gaslit when they say that they gaslight whenever they say like, oh, we are going to go after companies for price gouging. We covered this last week. Kamala Harris saying that companies and corporations and business owners were price gouging, when the fact is, we covered this last week. Prices go up because of inflation. So the government's the one that causes inflation because of their bad policies. The fact that they are sticking their noses where their noses ought not be. They do this, they cause inflation. Naturally, prices raise. And now we, the business owners, are gone after because we're price gouging. So they're gaslighting in that respect. And then Tim, what's his name, Walz, he gaslit whenever he said that, Republicans are saying that their own children are their enemies because their children disagree with them politically. That again is gaslighting, because they know full well what the public schools are doing.
Yeah.
They know full well what the public schools are there for. The purpose of the public schools is to turn children against their parents, namely to instill such doctrine, such ideology in the children that embraces statism, that embraces the bureaucracies, that embraces the so-called expert class, that embraces the administrative state, that teaches them to be pawns for this administrative state, that teaches them to believe that all of their hopes and aspirations and dreams are tied up in what the government does. That's what the public schools do. And so when you have your parents who you're watching break their back every day to go to work, when you watch your parents who are entrepreneurial and have their own small businesses and so on and so forth, they're looked at as the enemy. And so this is gaslighting. Whenever Tim Walz says like, oh, y'all call y'all's own children the enemy. Well, first of all, it's just a figure of speech. It's not, we don't literally think that our children are enemies, but what we're saying is the public schools exist to turn people's children into their enemies. That's a thing that's happening in real life. It's not my fault. It's the public school and so on and so forth. Anyway, that's a whole convoluted thing that maybe we'll get into this evening. But another thing too that stuck out to me, and this is the last thing I'll say before I give it back to you all, is just how you got a sense of how the Democrats see the government in relation to the people, right? I was talking to my oldest son about this earlier today, where, he was asking, Chad, or Dad, he doesn't call me Chad, he calls me Dad. Is that, would you have been like a Federalist or anti-Federalist? And I said, well, that's a very tough question. I think, knowing myself, I probably would have landed on the side of the anti-Federalists because I believe in state sovereignty. However, I get where the Federalists are coming from, because here's the thing, and please understand where I'm coming from when I say this. When it comes to the need for a federal government here in these United States of America, when we were trying to figure out what kind of country will we be now that we have won our independence from England, now that we have rejected and thrown off the whole concept of a monarchy, what kind of country will we be? The argument was over whether we would be a country with a strong federal government or one that put as its kind of priority sovereignty, state sovereignty and states' rights. And what the Federalists understood is that you can't have a bunch of nation states that border each other by invisible lines, especially when these states share natural resources, rivers, so on and so forth, because these are wars that are waiting to happen, right? You need to have some common identity with your neighboring states in order to prevent the inevitable wars, so on and so forth. So this is something that the Federalists understood, and something that I think is a nod to their wisdom. But at the same time, state sovereignty is still extremely important. Now, the reason I think it's important to bring that up is because now that we've established that we need that there needs to be a federal government to prevent such things as petty conflict and things like that from going on from state to state. Now that we've established that we need a federal government, we need to keep that government as small as possible, right? That government needs to ensure that there isn't wars breaking out, from state to state. There is some foreign affairs that the federal government needs to I guess, be in charge of. There is, the existence of a military, so on and so forth. But the fact is, the federal government has enough to take care of. And among those things should not be the ability for ordinary average Americans to pay their bills. I'm hoping that makes sense. Like the fact is, whenever I am looking at the bills that we have coming up next month or what have you, I'm not thinking, how can the government help me with these bills? Right? Because the government has its own things to take care of that I, as an individual, cannot take care of. When it comes to me as an individual, when it comes to me as a dad, when it comes to me as a man, I have a mind that God has gifted me with. I have limbs that God has gifted me with. I have the ability to go out and do. And so my ability to pay my bills depends on me and what I'm doing, not on what Barack Obama is doing, not on what Kamala Harris is doing, so on and so forth. The only thing that they can do is make matters worse by their intrusion in these affairs. So whenever you see Kamala Harris and Barack Obama and so on and so forth, Bill Clinton up there saying that, the president should be someone, and maybe we'll pull up the clip earlier, here in a minute. But Bill Clinton said the president should be someone who you bring your problems to and they solve them. The president should be someone who you bring your hopes to and your dreams to and they make your dreams come true. Not at all. Like, that's not constitutional. That's not the role of the president. If I want my dreams to come true, that's me. That's on me to do so. And so what I'm trying to say here is that when you look at the reoccurring theme and all of the speeches that were given by the orators at the DNC, is this notion that the government is supposed to take care of not only those affairs established in the Constitution, but all the way down to the microcosmic affairs as it relates to your individual duty to put food on your own table, to put a roof over your own head, to put clothes on your own back. And I think that very fact that half the country, if not more so, I would argue that it's more than half the country, believes that is part of the job description of the president of the United States. That is one of the biggest reasons we're in this fix that we're in. And unless and until you can change people's minds to realize that is not, in fact, the government's responsibility, we're only going to keep having people like Kamala Harris be on a major presidential bill as we move forward as a country. I'm hoping what I'm saying makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And, again, I think a lot of this goes back to the education. It goes back to our education system. Back in the day, before we had public schooling, kids could see their parents work hard. They could see what they had to go through because they had a closer relationship with their parents. Now, it's so separated that, you got the kids doing their thing over here and the parents doing their thing in another place. And you can't even make that connection of, oh no, my parents are working on, but it's them who's doing, going out and getting the stuff and doing work, doing the hard work. And so the government or the media and all these people can come in and say, vote for us. We're going to help make your lives better. So the kids and the parents end up with this like convoluted way of thinking of that the government should be. But we were talking about Michelle Obama first. I really want to dive into this part. I think this is the right clip.
No one has a monopoly on what it means to be an American. No one. Kamala has shown her allegiance to this nation, not by spewing anger and bitterness, but by living a life of service. She understands that most of us will never be afforded the grace of failing forward. We will never benefit from the affirmative action of generational wealth. If we bankrupt a business or choke in a crisis, we don't get a second, third, or fourth chance. We don't have the luxury of whining or cheating others to get further ahead. No. We don't get to change the rules so we always win. If we see a mountain in front of us, we don't expect there to be an escalator waiting to take us to the top. We get to work. In America, we do something.
Excuse me, ma'am, but if that is in fact the case, could she please explain to me what what the hell is civil rights law about in the first place? If people are not allowed to break the rules, if people are not allowed to do X, Y, and Z, then what the hell is this woman talking about? Just flat out, well, she started off her little soliloquy in that clip there, saying that, well, would she say that no one gets to define what an American is or some stuff? And I'm just sitting here like, man, what the hell are these people talking about? And talking about spewing hate and all this, again, we know what she's talking about. That's what the entire Democrat National Convention was about. It was this whole referendum on Trump. It was an I hate Trump rally. There was nothing there of substance. But of course, we all know this here in this audience. She's talking about spewing hate. This is the same woman who said that the first time she was ever proud of her country is when her husband was elected. This is the same woman who said that she knows for a fact that racism is still a problem in America because one time a white woman cut in front of her in line at a Dairy Queen. This is the same woman who said that she was unrecognized when she went to Target and an elderly white woman asked her to grab something off a bottom shelf, which is proof positive that America is racist, because how dare a white woman ask a black woman to get something off the shelf for her as if she is her servant? And it just goes on and on and on. She does not know why white folks don't want to be around us. So she says. I mean, who would even believe a single thing that comes out of this woman's mouth? And I'll leave it there. And just to go back on something Chad said, when we talked about the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, I think that all in all, when it was all said and done, they did strike a delicate compromise. But as we've seen throughout these 2 centuries, we've seen a complete upheaval, and the federal government has been able to just completely steamroll the states because there's a process to this, right? And we don't have to really go into it. But what we have in this country today is we talk about the uniparty, we talk about Republicans and Democrats working together and doing this and that. But in fact, what I see as a bigger problem than this kind of uniparty phenomenon that we have going on is this partnership between the bureaucracy and the courts. Because that's what's really happening. And that's who's really setting the agenda for America and has been setting the agenda for America since its de facto, as I like to call it, its de facto founding, which was 1964 with the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. But yeah, that woman, she's full of it, just completely full of it. I really can't stand these people. I really can't.
And, she
God help
said,
my heart.
You notice that she said, we don't change the rules so we can win the game. That's exactly what you do.
That's exactly what they did. Yeah.
That's exactly what you do. I mean, you'll remember, and I said this last week. What did they do 2 years into Biden's presidency, going into the primary? Right? It used to be that a recession is defined by 2 consecutive deficit quarters. Economists conveniently change the definition of what a recession is so they can tell the American people there is no Biden recession. The economy is actually on an incline because of Biden's policies. That's what they did. They changed the rules so that they can have winning results in the primary. So the fact that she's sitting up there saying the opposite of the truth is actually quite baffling. And the thing is, we shouldn't be surprised because this is what politicians do. But what's interesting to me is just the blatant lies, because I mean, I don't know if you all remember, but after the Biden or the Biden-Trump debate, all of the media was saying that yes, Biden had a bad night.
Right.
Yes, Biden had a bad night, but Trump lied and lied and lied and lied, and all he did was lie. Right. So I think it was either Chuck or Blanche who said it earlier. It's like they take a break when it comes to the lies of the DNC, when it comes to the lies of all their people. Michelle Obama, most of what she said up there was a lie, was projection, was gaslighting. But of course, the coverage that they get is, oh, can you believe Michelle Obama? Look how graceful she was. Look at her ethnic hairdo. Look how, so they make her look larger than life, where their coverage of the Republican, the RNC, was like, oh, all they did was lie. They stoked fear. They stoked bitterness, the this, the that, the other. And I don't know, if it's not blatantly obvious to you at this point, then I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, if I don't know. I don't even know, Chuck, Quisha, and Blanche, if this conversation is even worth having, like continuing in, because the fact is people still believe this crap. You know what I'm saying? So anyway.
We got one in the chat.
I've been able to change a couple minds.
We have one in the chat, so we definitely need to have this conversation.
And Chad, Keisha, before you chime in, I just wanted to real quick, Keisha, I promise. And Chad is absolutely right when he talks about changing the rules, because aside from, we can talk about what happened on election night or election week, right? We can talk about the Dominion voting machines. Dinesh D'Souza put out a brilliant documentary about the ballot stuffing and these kinds of things. But what Trump said specifically at that rally was he wanted the Senate only to count the electors, count the votes from the electors that were elected or selected constitutionally, according to Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2, because what we saw prior to the election was a changing of the rules of the game in order to compensate for a lack of people that were going to show up to the polls because of the pandemic. That's what was going on. And Trump was like, well, wait a minute, hold on. The election itself was not constitutional because they were doing things that they were not allowed to do, because the Democrat Party sent hundreds of its activists into these battleground states in order to upend our election laws. And that's what Donald Trump had an issue with. And aside from all of the other, conspiratorial stuff we can talk about, which I believe that there is even truth to some of that stuff, but we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that they did this in the lead up to the election. They changed the way in which we vote. Never mind the fact that all of the other stuff that they have been doing for years and years and years. Remember, I forgot the bipartisan committee with Jimmy Carter, and I forgot who the Republican was that put forth these plans to clean up our elections. And they did the exact opposite in 2020, after even Democrats themselves had been saying this has been a problem for decades and we need to clean this up. And then remember, they accused Donald Trump, the conspiracy that went wild in the media of Donald Trump was trying to collect all of the mailboxes. You all remember that? Somebody had said that they caught someone removing a mailbox from the corner, and all of a sudden, oh, Donald Trump's trying to steal the election because he's trying to have the Postal Service remove the mailboxes. Now, mind you, why in the hell should you even promote this idea of people voting by mail in the first place? But that's the only way that Democrats can get out their base, because their base won't go vote in person. Their base would rather put a slip in the mailbox. But yet still, when it comes to those kinds of things, it only benefits Democrats and never benefits Republicans when these large ballot dumps just show up in the middle of the night. But I'm crazy. It's you guys know the whole term gaslighting comes from the 1938 play written by Patrick Hamilton about the man who drove his wife crazy by continuously dimming the gaslight. And when she accused him of doing it, he said she wasn't doing it, and she eventually drove herself crazy, and he did so in order to, I believe it was to steal her inheritance, something like that. I never read the play, but this is what they do. They try to make you seem like you crazy. I know I ain't crazy.
Blanche.
Go ahead, Blanche.
Oh no, go ahead.
Oh, well, my internet, I swear, I'm not, I can be conspiratorial sometimes. And this is one of those times. I think that the enemy is after my internet. I promise you, because every time I didn't even hear what Michelle Obama said.
I thought so too. I thought so too when we first started doing this show back in the day. But I realized that we were paying for the lowest, I guess, package that you could possibly get. And I was like, oh, there's a problem. So I then got the highest package I could possibly get, and everything's good.
I'm supposed to have I'm supposed to be able to stream multiple streams at a time and all this kind of stuff. But as you can see, I can barely do one. Anyway,
so Cricket is offering that. No, I'm saying, I mean, the Cricket offers those features. I don't know. What they said, Keisha, what they said you on? They told you that, Keisha, you gonna be able to do all this stuff on your internet.
Cricket don't have that. That's what they told me.
Right. They told you that. Nah.
No, it might be even worse. I have Xfinity. Oh my gosh, always a problem.
That's Verizon, isn't it? Isn't that a subsidiary from Verizon?
I think it is. I think it is, isn't it? I think it is.
Well, I know it used to be Comcast. Now it's Xfinity, I believe.
Okay.
It's a mess. I can never get my internet, and they just say, "Oh, well, just upgrade." It's a monopoly because there's no other. I don't have any other options. You don't have any other options. You have to there's no other company to choose from. Anyway.
That's Jacksonville for you. Hey, if you have a clip you want me to play, just let me know and I'll play it. Maybe you can see it.
Yeah, right. Well, I wanted was that the clip where Michelle talked about how her and they so oppressed, what her mama wanted. Her mom wanted it, she didn't like the fact that people that they took more than what they needed with her and her and Barack and their $11 million home on
right.
No, I'll pay it. I'll play
with their 4. Okay, thank you.
Y'all waiting on me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought I had it right here ready to go.
We're typically very professional, y'all. So if you're new, this is
please forgive
not how this normally goes.
The screen is kind of small, y'all. You gotta forgive him.
Cutting our health care, taking away our freedom to control our bodies, the freedom to become a mother through IVF like I did, those things are not going to improve the health outcomes of our wives, mothers, and daughters. Shutting down the Department of Education, banning our books, none of that will prepare our kids for the future. Demonizing our children for being who they are and loving who they love. Look, that doesn't make anybody's life better.
I didn't hear it anyway.
When did Trump ever say you couldn't get IVF? That ain't even been a discussion. Who was even saying that?
Well, actually, no. It's been a discussion. But
getting IVF.
Yes. So this is a big thing because you have a lot of how you doing? You have a lot of people who are renting bodies. They're renting women's bodies to have babies, and some of them they're using IVF. So there's a big controversy going on now about IVF.
Why did Michelle need IVF?
Probably because she's a feminist and she probably did a lot of birth control. She probably did a lot of these drugs and stuff that really hinder your body from doing what it's supposed to do. Because
or
well, even IVF wouldn't even help that though. You're gonna need way more than IVF for that one, boo. But anyway, no, it is a big topic, and so that's why they're saying this. Even Tim Walz is saying he's lying. He's like, my family used IVF, but he didn't. They used another type of procedure, but it's
based on them children I saw, they did something wrong. There's something with the Petri dish went wrong when I saw his children. They looked that boy looked special. So I'm like,
No,
whatever they did, he got messed up in the lab because them kids that come out, he did something. It might have been IBS. I don't know. Maybe he did WWF. I don't know.
But the point is that's how the lies are so egregious because Trump has literally came out. He's for IVF, like whether you are for it or against whatever. He's never said anything to even suggest that he isn't for IVF. So just a bunch of more lies. These people just won't quit, and it's disturbing how much they lie because all it takes is just a little Google search to see, okay, what did Trump say about IVF? Literally, like that's all you have to do. But they know that people won't do that. And so
my father
that's what happens when you're in a cult.
Didn't aspire to be wealthy. In fact, they were suspicious of folks who took more than they needed. They understood that it wasn't enough for their kids to thrive if everyone else around us was drowning. Those were the values my mother poured into me until her very last breath. Kamala Harris and I built our lives on those same foundational values.
I just looked it up. It said Trump strongly supports IVF. Every article, even CNN said he supports IVF. This is crazy. So
it's crazy. But that lie that Michelle just told, her mother looked suspiciously upon people who took more than what they need. There's so much in that. First of all, what is taking more than you need? Because if your parents really believe that, why did they send you to Princeton? Right. Why did they send you to Princeton? For you to be broke? They sent you to Princeton so you could be broke, right, girl?
Right. Didn't have to go to Princeton.
Have 4 multi-million-dollar homes then. I guarantee you ain't around poor people because poor people can't. So this taking more than what you need. Oh, do you need 4 homes? Do you, Michelle? Do y'all, was your mother okay with y'all having 4 homes, an $11 million house on the beach with the climate change just to come in? Y'all got this, all of these things. Like, it is just like, how do you say that when y'all are worth now over $100 million? Your children have like $10 million a piece trust funds, which I'm cool with that. Like, I don't have no problem with you earning what you however much you want to make as much money as you possibly can. That's should be the goal.
But the thing is too, Quisha, like, I mean, nobody questions how that money was made either. I mean, Barack Obama served 8 consecutive years as president of the United States. We know as the American people what the salary of a president is. And yes, he started Higher Ground, Higher Ground Media or something like that, a propaganda entertainment company that makes movies for Netflix. And he started a couple of other companies, which he doesn't run, but it's like, you can't convince me that these are multi-million-dollar companies. It's insider trading. It's buddy deals. It's pay for play. That's how he was able to make money.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
But
then you'll see too, like he said at some during one of the videos that they want you to believe that Washington D.C. is full of corruption and full of this and full of that, and they're trying to strike fear in you. But we're the party of bringing everybody together. So like what he's doing is he's trying to make the American people believe that there's nothing to see here as far as the corruption is concerned. And the fact is, folks, those of you, the 3 of you here on this panel, I don't think people care. Like if the 4 of us were to expose and show receipts of how the Bidens and the Obamas and the Harrises and so on and so forth are super corrupt, and we were to show you line by line detail on how they're corrupt and how they're pay for play and how they're quid pro quo and things of this nature, I don't think people will care at the end of the day. I genuinely don't think people will care. So
I've been able to
the people that support them.
What'd you say, Keisha?
You're
What'd you
talking
say?
about the people that support them. Is that what you're talking
Yeah,
about,
I don't
Chad?
think people that support them will care. I mean, the fact is like on our quote unquote side, it's you know, it's yet another thing, I guess, for them to add to their arsenal. I mean, the information that we disseminate here on Cutting Through the Culture, and then the information that we all disseminate on our personal platforms. Yes, I think that it's yet another thing that they can use, I guess, in terms of having discussions in their own family, having discussions online, so on and so forth. So I guess it's good in that respect. But by and large, when it comes to people who support the Obamas, when it comes to Democrats in general, I don't think they care that their favorite politicians are corrupt.
I
You know
agree.
what I'm
They're in a cult. They don't. Whatever the leader says, they shall do. So yeah, I agree.
I've had some luck over the years, over the past 5-6 years. I've been able to reach quite a few people, even this current election cycle. You know, a friend of mine, he's finally. I remember, you know, some years and years ago, you know, he filmed a couple podcasts that I did in the studio, and he actually filmed a debate I had with this leftist after the George Floyd incident, and he just sat back and listened. He filmed it. He didn't, you know. And just recently, I happened to run into him at a bar, and he was like, "Yeah, man, hey Chuck, what's going on? Such and such and so forth." And he started telling me all of this stuff that he remembers hearing me say some years ago. And he was like, "Yeah, I'm starting to see everything playing out." And ever since I just so happened to run into him at this sports bar, I mean, he's just been in my DMs on IG. We've been DMing each other back and forth. And you know, he's really starting to see what's going on, and not just him, but there have been a couple of other friends of mine or associates that I have who, you know, we are having an effect on. I will say, and so if you're just one person, if you can reach one who's even open to listening, you mean, you know, each one teach one, you know, it counts. So. You know, don't try to change the world, but just your own immediate circle, your own immediate circumstance. If people are warm to the idea of even listening to what you may have to say, you know, it's worth giving it a shot, I will say. But with
I would agree with that. I would agree with that because I mean, there's obviously people in my life who I've had the same effect on, and I would venture to say that Chuck and I'm sorry, Blanchard and Quisha has too. I guess what I'm saying, Chuck, is that when you look at, and of course, these are hyper partisans at the DNC, the people in the crowd cheering and yelling and screaming.
Right.
But I guess like that optic of seeing the people that are like, you saw that lady doing this and like she's at church, right? The heavy set lady. Like there were a lot of people like that were like, it was as if they were at church and they were just like awestruck and basically spiritually moved by the things that were coming out of the mouth of Michelle and Barack and so on. And then too, obviously you see it online. People like Roland, and I mean, Roland has over 1 million followers and subscribers on YouTube. DL Hughley, he's not funny and hasn't been funny for a very long time yet. And still people still listen to him. And of course, to your point, it's not our job to change everybody's mind, and nor do I desire to change everybody's mind. I say what needs to be said, and whoever wants to listen to it, great. If you don't, keep it moving. I don't care. But I think, I guess what I'm speaking more to is like, by and large, you can expose all this stuff, and I'm grateful for one person to listen or what have you, or nobody, you know, but it is a little discouraging when you see like the fact that all this information is out there. I think Blanche mentioned earlier, you can Google this stuff, even Google, which we know is a leftist corporation, but that basically pushes out the information they want you to see. But even Google will show you the stuff that we're saying, you know. But with that abundance of information for people to still fall for the old banana in the tailpipe, it's infuriating. But go ahead, Blanche.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chuck.
Yeah, there's so many. I mean, it's difficult for me because every sentence, literally every sentence in that clip It's like, boom, okay, pause right there. And then that warrants a serious deep dive breakdown, and just move on. Boom, next sentence. So it's hard for me. I guess I'll just harken on this one point. I hate this thing about bodies and it being our bodies. But Michelle, it's not your body. It's not your body. It's somebody else's body. Unless you don't regard them, you don't see them as a person. Of course, they're just a clump of cells that we don't know when a fetus becomes viable. But a person is always a clump of cells, whether they're a day old or in their 40s, such as myself. I too am a clump of cells when you get down to the basics of it. But yeah, it's not your body, and it's funny because this whole thing, it was never about the rights of a woman or a woman's right to choose. This was about sexual liberation. I'll try to make this brief. When you go back to Friedrich Engels' book, I think it was released the year after Marx's death, so that would be 1884, 1885, somewhere around there, when Engels released his solo work, Origins of the Family, Property and the State. And much of the work, much of the ideas espoused in that work, Friedrich Engels himself says that he pretty much lifted a lot of those ideas from Marx, who in turn lifted a lot of his ideas about family formation from an American anthropologist by the name of Lewis Henry Morgan. But a key takeaway from that book and what Engels said about marriage as an institution, he said marriage, monogamous marriage in particular, was an institution that was created to perpetuate male dominance over women. And this was all, it was all linked and connected to this idea of, private property and capitalism and blah, 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 blah. And so according to Friedrich Engels, the only type of marriage that was moral in his eyes was a marriage that was dependent or predicated upon love. And to Friedrich Engels, to go even further, sex, of course, is the ultimate expression of that love. And so marriage as a monogamous institution, particularly when you start talking about traditionally, and how this is just the idea of not just Engels, but a lot of evolutionary anthropologists and so on and so forth, is when it comes to our social expectations for sexual behavior, when it comes to men versus women, when they are in these committed relationships or a marriage, women are not allowed to step out. But in various cultures throughout the world and at various times, even now, even today, you even hear a lot of people in the West making this argument that a man should have the right to have multiple women, or a man could step out on his wife and it's not that big of a deal, right? And so the idea of the evolutionist or the anthropologist is that, well, men did so as to, because a man could sleep with a woman who's not his wife, bear a child and go back to his home and sort of not have that foreigner's DNA, if you will, intermingle with those in his household. And so the idea is that if a woman has sex with a man who's not her husband and gives birth to him, then from an evolutionary standpoint and from a genetic standpoint, it's like, okay, well, now I have an outsider's genes inside my family, and he or she proposes a risk, not just to my lineage and diluting my genetics and so on and so forth, but, quite literally that person can pose a threat in many different ways. And so there's a whole mountains and mountains upon literature available to read when it comes to this stuff. And you can take it with a grain of salt if you like. I'm just telling you what they say. And I bring all of that up to say, when you fast forward to the 1950s, 1960s, this was the prevailing attitude and what I mean is that, going back to what Engels said when he talked about love and sex, a huge part of the discontent from the feminists at the time was the fact that men got to be men were more sexually liberated than the women were, because the men didn't have to deal with the consequences of being sexually promiscuous.
Right.
Okay. Right. It wasn't just about women having the putting off having children so that they can join the workforce and all these other things. Of course, the Marxist feminists like Steinem and Friedan and also Caroline Bird, they would make these arguments, yes, but more so than anything else, it was about gaining or a woman gaining respect from the male of the species for their a want or their need to be just as sexually promiscuous as they believe that men in fact were. And so all of these things would come down the line later on. And the same thing when it comes to gay liberation. And this is why the women's rights movement and the gay liberation movement were partners in a sense, because in the beginning, when the gay liberation movement first got off the ground in the late 60s, early 70s, the right of gays to get married was never part of the plan. That came as a result of the HIV/AIDS epidemic of the 1980s, early 90s. But even going back to the early 90s, gays getting married was not even in the top 10 of priorities for gay activists. What they wanted was, so they claimed, was dignity. And what they meant by wanting dignity is that they wanted dignity for their sexually perverse lifestyles. The same thing when it comes to women. This was a challenge to the status quo in terms of what was, considered to be socially or morally acceptable. And we know this because even after all of these gains in reproductive health and so on and so forth were made, when the birth control pill hit the market in 1960, you even had states that were legalizing abortion as early as the 1960s. As a point of fact, in 1967, California legalized abortion under very strict circumstances during Ronald Reagan's governorship over the state of California. And so you had, just like with segregation in the South, you had these changes occurring state by state. But when the federal government, remember, the courts and the bureaucracy got involved and set policy for the entire nation across the board. And that's when abortion became a contentious issue, because it was never settled law state by state in the first place. But that's all they wanted. They just wanted the right to be sexually liberated. They wanted the right to be sexually promiscuous. This is what they say. This is what they claimed.
And it's a direct rebellion
back to the 1960s.
It's a direct rebellion against God. I mean, if you look up sexual immorality in the Bible, look at all these verses that talk about sexual immorality.
But they say that the Bible doesn't talk about sexual, particularly homosexuality.
I mean, it does talk about homosexuality.
No, I know, but I'm saying that's what they will say.
1 Corinthians 6, flee from sexual immorality. Each other sin is a person commits is outside the body, but the sexually immoral person sins against his own body. Let marriage be held in high honor amongst all, and let the marriage bed be undefiled, for God will judge the sexually immoral and adulterous. 1 Thessalonians, for this is the will of God, your sanctification, that you abstain from sexual immorality, that each one of you know how to control his own body in holiness and honor, not in the passion of lust like the Gentiles who do not know God. Matthew 5:25, but I say to you that everyone who looks to a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his own heart. On and on and on I can go. I mean, Chuck, when you look at sexual immorality, I guess being a major component, and you saw it in the DNC, abortion. Pete Buttigieg, a gay man, talking about abortion and women's rights. You saw Raphael Warnock, a whole pastor, talking about abortion and the right of the woman's body and so on and so forth. Michelle Obama, women's reproductive rights. Barack Obama, women's reproductive rights. On and I can go. I think the majority of them, Al Sharpton even, talking about the LGBT rights, which we know is, one mustn't do much more than look at a LGBT pride, quote unquote, parade or march on the internet and see how sexually explicit it is. Very sexually provocative, very sexually motivated. All of it is about sex, the normalization of queerness, of, again, just completely defying and I would say outright blaspheming God. It makes one wonder, like, what comes of a nation that promotes on a major political stage sexual immorality. I mean, I don't think this is a nation that's long for this world, because this isn't anything to play around with at all.
Right. And Chad, I didn't mean to cut you off if you weren't finished, but I wanted to also mention that in 19, I think it was, it may have been, I'm 71, between 71 and 1973, you may even can pull it up. There was a book put out, I think it was by a group of female physicians in the state of Boston, if memory serves me correctly, but they put out a book. It was called Our Body, Ourselves. If you just study, again, the whole history of the women's liberation movement throughout the 20th century, this was another landmark moment in the fight for women's liberation in the early 1970s with the release of this book. And in that book, one of the key takeaways in the book, Our Body, Ourselves, was they talked about how, okay, now with the Roe v. Wade decision, we've pretty much removed that I guess, problem, barrier, or whatever, because with sexual activity, right, children are conceived. Well, another thing that they claimed, and it's in this book, if you don't believe me, you can go and look it up for yourself. They chided the male-dominated, propaganda, this discourse. All of this was for the purpose of benefiting men, to help to perpetuate this, a status quo that only benefited men. Because what they claimed in that book was, they said that the threat back then, it wasn't common for people to say STDs. Remember, they just said VD, right, which stood for venereal diseases. And so they said that women were being told not to be sexually promiscuous because they needed to be mindful of venereal disease. Well, in that book, they claimed that that was, in fact, largely fiction. And they gave in that book, this is supposed to be a woman's health book. It was nothing but a feminist screed. And what they said in that book to women was, be as sexually promiscuous as you like, but they gave women tips on how to protect themselves from the transmission of venereal disease. And they advocated for women to perform what's called shorthand inspections. I don't know if you all know what shorthand inspections are. This is a common practice that prostitutes utilize, and they perform shorthand inspections on their johns before they sleep with them. And what they do is, I'm going to keep it as PC as I can, or PG as I can. You grab the male member, the male penis, and there's a part, you squeeze it, they informed women, and to see if any discharge was released. If a man released a discharge, it was, highly likely that he had an infection. If there is no discharge, then he was fair game. Go ahead, sleep with them. This is called a shorthand inspection. So they were telling women in the 70s how to perform these inspections in order to protect themselves from sexually transmitted diseases, or what was more commonly referred to back then as simply venereal disease. So don't listen to these men, ladies. They just don't want you to be sexually free as they are by trying to tell you that you're going to catch something. So when HIV/AIDS became a thing, remember the reason why, and there's it's a great book written about the AIDS epidemic and how politicians, the activists, and academia covered up what was going on in the gay community. It was actually written by a gay man. Some of you have probably heard of it. It's called And the Band Played On. I think that's the name of it. Memory serves me correct. It's called And the Band Played On. You had this outbreak of just all kinds of diseases amongst gay men, because the gay liberation movement had gained a lot of traction in the 1960s, because what gays wanted, they wanted to have their bathhouses. They wanted to have the areas for their prostitution and so on and so forth. They wanted places where they could be sexually liberated. And they realized that they had an ally in the courts by the early 1990s, because a lot of men who had boyfriends who were dying of AIDS were being blocked from inheriting the property of their dead boyfriends who had passed away from HIV/AIDS, all sorts of things from, you see it in the movies for dramatic effect, when the person is in the hospital and then the person comes rushing in and they say, wait, no, visiting hours are only, post family only. And so a lot of gay men, they were kept out of hospitals. They couldn't come see their lovers, right? There were all sorts of blockades in terms of medical insurance. a lot of gay men didn't have access to medical insurance, and they said, well, I want to utilize my boyfriend. So this is when you really began to see, by the early to mid 90s, as a result of the HIV/AIDS epidemic, which was the result of the gay liberation movement that gave a safe space for gay men to engage in their perversions. That's when you begin to see gays talking about wanting the right to get married, because so many of them were dying. That's because they wanted the right to be promiscuous, and they wanted the right to be open about it. They even, of course, went so far. I remember the Chippendales Club in the late 1970s. This was one of the first strip clubs that were exclusively for women. You had gay rights activists that actually sued the Chippendales Club because they wanted to come in. They said, no, women only. They said, well, we want to come too. So all of this, it was all about sex. It was never about anything else. Never.
I personally can't stand male strippers. It's weird. Okay, it's weird. What I was gonna say though is I was talking to a friend, this was years ago, who was ministering to their gay friend, and he was saying that with gay people, with male gays, like because men all like naturally have a higher sex drive, I guess, a higher sex drive than women. When you get two men together, it's like, it makes it like, just that it's literally all about just sex, because they're both just there's no balance in it. I guess that's the best way to say it. But so I can definitely see how, it's just a, just pleasure. There's nothing else to the relationship. Like there can't be anything else to the relationship anyway. It's
all carnal. It's all carnal. I mean, it's all carnal. It's what it is. I mean, to your point, Quisha, and to Chuck's point, it's the desires of the flesh. It's chasing after the desires of the flesh. There's nothing new under the sun. Even Solomon said that I chased after everything. He said, I denied myself nothing that my eyes desired.
Right.
And in the end, he found that it was all vanity, like chasing the wind, he said. And this is what they're putting up as the forefront. And it's embodied once again in the DNC and all of their rhetoric of women's rights and bodily autonomy and, being pro-abortion, this, that, and the third. Were you about to say something, Blanche?
Yeah, well, I was going to say that what the LGBTQ community is asking for is they're asking for believers to accept them.
Right.
Because
that's what it is.
Yeah, their push is they know it's wrong, but they want if believers say it's okay, then they'll feel like they won't get the wrath of God. So really, all of this they're doing, this whole push and movement, is to get us to say, okay, it's okay. And really, the biggest push is to get us to say that a man is a woman. And then once we say that, then it's over, because after that, the floodgates open up, and then we're gonna have Armageddon, because you'll have a whole world of people just submitting to the will of Satan. We were talking earlier about,
not to cut you off, Blanche, and I want you to finish your point, but man, what you just said, I mean, you knocked it out of the park. And I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Blanche, but I think that's the reason why anytime these folks criticize religion, they don't necessarily criticize religion wholesale. They specifically target Christianity, because they understand that Christianity has principles, it has standards, because God is the author of morality. God is the author of what's right and wrong. And if they can remove Christianity as a viable culture here in the United States, then it's a free-for-all at that point. Mm-hmm. Anything goes at that point. So we just need to remove Christianity. We need to contend with and confront Christianity, and in so doing, because the thing is with Christianity in particular, with everything that it has to say about sexual immorality, with everything that it has to say about homosexuality and fornication and infidelity, and basically just being sexually immoral, if we can remove that as a standard, then anything goes. But it's interesting because it's like, it's not for nothing that the Bible talks so much about sexual immorality, because when you think about the toll that it takes on a whole society, on a whole nation, when people are just kind of free to indulge sexually, it has ramifications in literally every other facet of life. I mean, think about it. Think about the turmoil that a young child or an adolescent have to go through when they're having to basically unwillingly be caught in the middle of a divorce because dad cheated on mom, and there's fights over custody, and I'm having to come to terms with the fact that I might have a new stepmom, and so on and so forth. It completely just ravishes your world as a young person. There's so many ramifications as a result of sexual immorality. And the fact that you have a major political party just promoting it wholesale, how can you have a functional society when you're promoting sexual immorality? Go ahead, Blanche.
Yeah, I think that and I think that people, they sell it as these people want to be accepted, they just want to be loved, they want to express themselves. That's not really what they're asking for. What they're asking for is for us to say it's okay. If you think about it from a spiritual standpoint, if we agree with it, then we're basically taking on their burden and their punishment. We think about God's judgment. And so it's this whole concept of safety in numbers. So they believe if we can get enough believers to sign off on it, then guess what? When God returns, we're going to be protected. There's no way God's going to kill us amongst all of the believers and the Christians and the good people. It's not. So again, that's their mentality. Their mentality isn't to be accepted. You talk to most LGBTQ members, if you have a one-on-one talk with them, they'll tell you that it's wrong. None of them actually feel 100% comfortable one-on-one. In the public, they're going to say they love it, but you talk to them one-on-one, most of them talk about they were either molested, they had some kind of trauma, some kind of confusion. It was something that happened in their life that put them on that path. With most of them, even girls that even go into stripping or prostitution is usually some kind of form of molestation, because when the child is young and they're most vulnerable, they open that gateway up and they don't really recover from that without Christ. And so these LGBTQs, make no mistake about it, they don't want all this. We want to love and that's not what they're asking for. They're asking for, that's why they're for consent. That's why in California, they want to change the bathrooms. That they want you to walk into a bathroom and say, you know what? It's not man or woman, it's just bathroom with a man and woman sign on there. So again, this is what they really want. And so the problem is that they're framing it now to where they're tying in everything that deals with fornication into one stance. So you think about abortion, most abortions come by way of fornication, not married, making the wrong decision, having sex, and don't want to deal with the consequences. That's most abortions. I don't want to deal with the consequences. Usually the couple's not married. And then you talk about LGBTQs, the men especially, carnal. Think about none of it produces life. Think about all of this, then also identity. Everything they deal with deals with the actual carnal, physical nature of man and woman, and nothing spiritual. Even to the point now they're talking about, well, when the Bible says abomination for a man to lay with a man, what it's really saying is they put a whole other interpretation on it. So these people, make no mistake about it, they don't want acceptance. If there's a city and there's one straight club and there's 9 gay clubs or alternative clubs, that one straight club will be overrun with all the gays and trans. Now, you would think if they had their own clubs, they would only stay in their clubs. That ain't the case. Even here in Atlanta, you go out, they have their own parts of town and their own clubs. They still come to the regular clubs, homosexual clubs, to party. Why? Because the goal is to get people to consent to the behavior, consent to the sin. So I know what they say, it sounds good, but at the end of the day, they want us to say it's okay. And once we do that, it's a wrap.
Yeah, Blanche, they want
I would say.
Go ahead, Keisha. Go ahead. Go ahead, Keisha. I'll go after you.
I would say also that I think it's a thrill for them to turn out, if you can even do that, a straight person. I think that's why I mean, they've said it themselves, you hear them say it, like it's a thrill for them to go after people who are straight. And so I mean, it's highly spiritual, it is a direct attack on the image of God and the family at the root of it all,
What did that dude say that one time?
Huh?
What did that dude say that one time? His booty was so juicy. Remember that?
Oh my goodness, bro. Take us back. That guys, go ahead, Keisha. Were you finished?
I'm done now. Yes.
And not to say that. I mean, we just go wherever the wind blows here, guys. But I mean, this is a big part of the Democrat Party platform. This is why it deserves the time that we're spending on it. Chad so brilliantly talked about the importance of the family and the wisdom contained within Scripture, because to rupture that thing is so. It has such reverberating consequences. I thought about, I couldn't help when Chad talked about the trauma that a child goes through during a divorce and whatnot. This is especially true when it comes to Wilhelm Reich. Wilhelm Reich was a member of the Communist Party. He was either Hungarian or Austrian. I can't recall, but nevertheless, he was a pupil of Sigmund Freud, and he would later on become a Frankfurt School acolyte. But he was also a card-carrying member of the Communist Party. Well, he made his sojourn to the Soviet Union in the 1930s. And when his time in the Soviet Union ended, he actually wrote a book titled Sexual Revolution that was published, I believe the year was 1936. And this was the first time I think anyone had ever even heard the term sexual revolution in public, or at least he is the one who popularized it. And I bring up Reich because the story goes, and he says this in his own memoirs, that his father was a very sort of detached. He wasn't a very emotionally, I guess, a man in terms of how he displayed his affections and so on and so forth. And so his wife, as a result, felt unloved. She felt neglected and so on. And so Wilhelm Reich's mother was extremely, extremely promiscuous and had numerous affairs on his father. And this had such a profound effect on him. And his mother would almost, I mean, she didn't make this a secret. I mean, she would tout and flaunt, her affairs in front of her son. And it kind of distorted and did something to him. And he almost, because of that, this is according to Reich himself. Remember, he's a member of he actually began to have sexual feelings about his own mother. Even Reich says that he began to have sexual urges as early as 4 years old, where he claimed that he actually attempted to have sex with the family's maidservant when he was 4 years old. His father, at a point, learned about the sexual affairs, and as a result, his father tried to kill their mother. I think he strangled her or beat her within an inch of her life or something to that effect. But I guess she lived. But the father, the mother she was so distraught. Her husband had basically tried to kill her. She was in this loveless marriage. And so she went on to commit suicide. And then shortly thereafter, Wilhelm Reich's father would die of circumstances I can't recall. But this left a long-lasting impression on the life of Wilhelm Reich. And he became one of the early fathers, if not the founder, of this very notion of sexual liberation. And that's just a small portion of Wilhelm Reich's dysfunctional childhood. When we think of, and Blanche, again, hits the nail on the head, because not just when it comes to the quote unquote gay lifestyle, But everything else, right, when it comes to the 1960s and this whole thing of tolerance and coming together, John Stuart Mill once famously said that when a society begins to prioritize diversity, they will then begin to have a little tolerance for dissent. So when a society begins to place emphasis on diversity, they will cultivate little tolerance for dissent. And that was the whole purpose of it, because it isn't enough to, I guess, desegregate or to allow people from different sort of lifestyles to find a way to get along. The people who don't like that particular person for their quote unquote lifestyle must be made to accept them for their differences. And that means that in terms of their behavior, in terms of what they say, in terms of what they think, this is the whole idea of political correctness, this kind of Maoist based Marxism. This is where it comes from, this idea of diversity, equity, inclusion. It comes from Mao. It comes from this, you know, the whole idea of political correctness and diversity. Diversity was understood by the great thinkers who we owe our great civilization to be a hindrance to citizenship. Post the 1960s, it became the very precondition of citizenship itself, this whole idea of diversity. But of course, if you don't have diversity, then of course you don't have, or if you promote this idea of diversity above all other things, then you essentially are no longer a free nation. And lastly, if you want to know exactly what gay liberation was about, go back to Carl Whitman's Gay Manifesto that was put out in 1970. Carl Whitman was a part of a communist cell called the Red Butterfly. He was also closely associated with Tom Hayden, and he was a member of the Students for a Democratic Society, and he had a close connection and relationship with Tom Hayden. Carl Whitman was a member of the Red Butterfly, and he put out a gay manifesto in 1970. If anybody's interested in what gays were about back then, just go and read the Gay Manifesto. And I guess I'll spare you guys some of the information from the Gay Manifesto, because I feel like I've been going too long. I guess you all can go and read that on your own time.
Yeah, save that. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Quisha.
No, I was going to play a clip, so go ahead.
Studies can be considered practices that have a shared political investment in terms of denaturalizing heterosexuality, right? To say that heterosexuality is not normal, it's not natural, it's not universal. And at the same time, denaturalizing whiteness, right? That it holds that whiteness is not natural or normal or universal, but a historical construct that has societal implications and impacts bodies.
Black slaves would be looked at as property. The ways in which these will load up both heterosexuality and whiteness onto the same body is something that we need to think about.
I do think that queer studies and critical race studies really work together.
I went for this is because he sags his ass off. Like every time we be kicking it with the homies, this would just be sagging. His ass would be so juicy. You know what I'm saying? So I was just like, he was like, what made you want to holler at me? Like out of all the homies, like, come on, bro. Like I know I don't get that vibe and type. And I'm just like, bro, you don't get that vibe, but like you always got your ass out. Like that's the vibe. Like what y'all don't understand is that attracts gay niggas or bisexual niggas. Like, so you doing that, that turns us on. So it don't matter if you get down or not. And honestly, that's why I said sagging is the biggest hint, because if you not sagging, I've noticed there be some niggas with some fat ass booties, but I wouldn't even know because they won't be sagging. And because they not sagging, I'm not lusting for them.
Go ahead, Black.
Speaking of the gays, let's listen to Barack Obama. Here we go.
Our politics have become so polarized these days. All of us across the political spectrum seem so quick to assume the worst in others. Unless they agree with us on every single issue, we start thinking that the only way to win is to scold and shame and out-yell the other side. And after a while, regular folks just tune out. or they don't bother to vote. Now, that approach may work for the politicians who just want attention and thrive on division, but it won't work for us. Donald Trump sees power as nothing more than it means to his ends. Donald Trump and his well-heeled donors, for them, one group's gains is necessarily another group's loss.
You know,
Gaslighting.
Just briefly. Here is Carl Whitman on Black liberation. Let me tell you what he says. This is directly from the Gay Manifesto. On Black liberation, Carl Whitman says, this is tenuous right now because of the uptightness and super masculinity of many Black men, which is understandable, he says. Despite that, we must support their movement, particularly when they are under attack from the establishment. We must show them that we mean business, and we must figure out which of our what our common enemies are: police, City Hall, and capitalism. Those are the words of Carl Whitman speaking of how we should support, or why gays should support, Black liberation. Again, you see, why we are where we are right now. You take these disparate groups and lump them together. You think about Obama in 2012, I think, what did the exit polls show? That only about 36% of whites in America of voting age actually supported Barack Obama. He is the first president who won the presidency by cobbling a bunch of disparate groups together in the sort of anti-white coalition. And that has been the face of the Democrat Party since the Obamification, if you will, of the party. Mind you, the Democrat Party has been radical for a number of decades, but Barack Obama just really took the mask off the party.
Definitely.
Go ahead.
What you saw, I mean, Chuck, to your point, with those group of professors and that little Zoom call that we just played earlier. I know we played 3 clips, so that might be confusing for a lot of people in the audience. Which, every clip is pertinent except for the juicy booty one. But whenever those professors, Keisha, whenever those professors are talking about like conflating anti-whiteness with anti-heteronormalcy, I think they called it. You're right. It all comes from the school of cultural Marxism, namely critical theory, basically challenging ideas of what is considered to be normal, i.e., one man, one woman together in a marriage raising children, or i.e., I don't call it this, but they call it whiteness. And when they say whiteness, what they mean, and Chuck and Blanche and Quisha, y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but what they mean when they say whiteness is basic decency, working to make a living, pulling your own weight, being honorable and a person of integrity, and being on time, and a man of your word, and a woman of virtue, just basic standards of decency, they dismiss as whiteness. And it's interesting to me that professors are interested in uprooting common standards of decency in favor of what exactly? I don't know. So it's interesting because we know what the ideology aims to do versus what the reality of their rhetoric yields. Namely, the whole concept behind their ideology, the whole concept behind their rhetoric is we want for people to be their true selves. We want for gays to be their true selves. We want for queers to be their true selves. We want for trans folks to be their true selves. We don't want them to be judged. We don't want them to be, we want for people to just show up and to be who they are. So that's the rhetoric. But again, there's consequences to the ideology that they're pushing. there's negative consequences, societally speaking, to the rhetoric that they're pushing. There's dysfunction, there's diseases, there's turmoil and all such, manner of indecency and decadence and degeneracy as a result of the rhetoric that they're speaking, that doesn't bode well for a functioning society. I guess my question then is, I'm not asking a question I don't know the answer to. I do know the answer to this question, but I don't know. What do you all think? Do you think that they know the dysfunction that will result in the rhetoric that they're spouting, or not? Do you think they genuinely believe that it will make for a better, more progressive society, or do you know, or do you think that they know that it will yield chaos and dysfunction?
I think that's so. Again, I go back to the consent piece. So the issue is, if you're a part of that community and you come out into the world, there's going to be people that are against your lifestyle. The fact that somebody's against your lifestyle is an automatic indicator that what you're doing is possibly wrong. So this brings about some form of conviction. Most of these people in America grew up in the church. They are familiar with certain things of the Bible. So these people are already finding a way to justify going against the Bible. That's why many of them try to point out certain scriptures to say, okay, the Bible's inconsistent, it's not this. But their ultimate goal is for society to be, like you say, Chad, in a state where no one can be held accountable. If we go back to Lot in Sodom and Gomorrah, think about it, it was 2 cities. So that means back in that time period, you had 2 huge cities that were filled with not just LGBTQs, but they said the cities glowed with sin. And you could see the city actually glowing. And so if you think about what was the nature of the people in the city, well, we saw it because Lot is outside of the gate to meet the angels when they come. He didn't want the angels to come inside because he knew what they were like inside. So he tried to tell the angels, look, I'll leave with y'all, but y'all just come back later. We'll do this later. They was like, nah, the time is now. We going in. So when they go inside, how did they respond? They all surrounded his house. They said, we saw these men walk in, 0% body fat, 6-pack, broad shoulders, look like Idris Elba and Brad Pitt. They walked in and they said, we want them. So the nature of what it is they do is to conquer. That's what it's a conquering spirit. So when they went to the house, they weren't asking Lot, they were demanding Lot bring them out because they wanted the angelic butt. What I'm saying is that same spirit exists today with them. Their goal is to conquer. And I believe, honestly, their goal is to get society into a place where they don't give us a choice. They actually make us participate in their lifestyle. This is why they want the children so bad. They want to be able to say, if you want to do this, you got to first do this, because again, they want us to consent to what they're doing. They want us to be in the same boat with them. And I realize that we talked about it earlier about changing people's ideas and stuff when it comes to, are we going to be with the Republicans? Are we going to be? These people have no intention of switching over because it's not an information issue. They can go to Google and look. They don't care. If you talk to most of these people and give them receipts, facts, they don't care about that. This is a character issue. The same spirit that's in the LGBTQs is the same spirit that's in them. They want chaos to have no accountability, because if the country is chaotic, we can't be held accountable. So yes, they want it to be chaotic, but before it's chaotic, the first step is for us to say what you're doing is okay. Then once we say that to them, they're going to release the Kraken. They're going to release this big, they're going to pull a drawbridge up. It's going to be this big rainbow colored monster, and he's going to come through and he's going to pillage and plunder the whole United States. So again, the Bible says be fruitful and multiply. That's God's first commandment to us, for us to be fruitful and multiply. Their whole lifestyle literally goes against that. So when we talk about Satan is not going to get deep. He'll go back to the beginning. If God said be fruitful, okay, I'm going to promote something that's anti-fruitful. The lifestyle doesn't yield life. It's a lifestyle that just yields more sin and more lust. And so Their goal is chaos. Make no mistake about it. Because if it's chaotic, then we know who's in charge. And it ain't God.
Well, to your question, Chad. Go ahead, Keisha.
Oh,
You
I
gonna
was
say
just gonna
something?
say that I think some do know that it's going to yield chaos and they don't care, and then some don't. They actually really do believe like this is good. We just need to accept people. We just need to, just let them be. That's what's causing them, to be depressed and sad and blah 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 blah. They think that they just need to be affirmed in whatever debauchery that they're doing when that's just not the case. Like those things don't yield happiness. They just don't.
But
And
hold on, Keisha, 1 second. But Keisha, who are they asking the affirmation from? Who are they asking to be tolerant? Think about it. Like who is all the rhetoric geared towards? It's not geared towards just anybody. The rhetoric they're talking about is geared towards us. When they talk about being tolerant, they're talking about us accepting what they're doing. So what I'm saying is, you say they may think it's going to be better, but really what they're asking for is us to consent to it. They want us to say, you know what, it's okay. You know what, y'all come on into church. You know what, boy, put the dress on. It's okay, girl. Put the thing on and walk around. So again, I'm just saying all of their rhetoric ain't just to society, because most folks in society probably don't even care. Their rhetoric is to a specific group that follows a book that says what you all doing is an abomination. So they want us.
Correct. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. But I was talking specifically about Chad's question. I thought he was asking, like, did I think that did we think that they were intentional, basically, or do they know that these things will yield chaos? And I was just saying, I think some know that it's chaos and it's going to bring about the destruction that they want, and then some naively think that this is good for them. And I agree with you also. Yeah, this is geared towards the Christian. It is a direct attack on God's image. They want, like you said, because the God that we serve, the only God, has rules and boundaries, and there are certain things that you can and cannot do. And these people, they don't care about those things. They don't care. They want to, what does the Bible say? Oh God, I just was quoting the scripture.
They try to come up with
new
ways to sin. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
They try to come up with new ways, fantastical ways to sin.
They give them over to them
Reprobate mind.
Yeah, I mean, like they're just there's another anyway. The point is they are adamant about, like you said, getting Christians on board, because this is a battle. If I can move, it's like territory. If I can move some of them, it's like a football field. If I can move some of you over here on my side, then I can further advance, this dark kingdom. And so, it's an intentional attack on God's image.
I believe it's both and. I believe it's, depending on who you're referring to, some of them are well aware of the dysfunction and the chaos that their rhetoric would yield. And some of them are idealistically invested in the normalization of queerness. And they believe wholeheartedly that this will make for a better, more prosperous society that is flowing with milk and honey, that is fruitful, no pun intended.
Fruity.
They genuinely believe that this will make for a better, more happier society. This idea of indulging in whatever your sexual preference or your sexual interests are. And this kind of goes back to, this goes back to the one of the pitfalls of intellectualism. And this term anti-intellectual is interesting to me. I know, you know, Chuck used this term a number of times. Actually, forgive me, Chuck. That may have been in some private conversations that you and I have. So forgive me if I'm but I don't know. Anti-intellectualism. It's interesting because intellectualism as an industry has been used to promote all manner of decadence and indecency and amorality. Intellectualism have. I mean, if you look at your premier public intellectuals, be they Noam Chomsky, Michael Eric Dyson, Cornel West, on and on and on I can go. I mean, there's only a handful of people that you can consider public intellectuals who are touting common sense rhetoric and even Christian rhetoric. But the overwhelming majority of those who are in the space of being public intellectuals are persons who don't believe in God, and as such don't believe in God's standard, don't believe in God's principle. And so they're promoting something that's foreign to the gospel, foreign to the scriptures. And they have resolved that they know what's best for society, that they know how to create a society where people who are multicultural, people who are multi-ethnic, people who come from different walks of life can live together in peace and harmony. So they have put themselves in the place of God, and they've established this notion that we know what's best for the prosperity and the progression of mankind. And so they genuinely believe, many of them, that the promotion of indulgence is something that can make for a better society. And I don't think that they are aware, many of them, of the dysfunction and of the chaos that ensues as a result of their beliefs, because they believe wholeheartedly in their own intellect. They believe wholeheartedly in their own wit. They believe wholeheartedly in their own intelligence. And you know, it's folly, quite frankly. The Bible says the heart is deceitful among all things. No one can understand it. And the Bible also says that God has chosen the foolish things to confine the wise, or those who perceive to be knowledgeable. Go ahead.
Can I weigh in, Chad?
Whoever.
Yeah. It's not just, well, I guess it all depends upon what one would consider, I guess, intelligence, because it has a lot to do with their own passion and their own creativity. You know, if you're familiar with, Herbert Marcuse, and even to go back to Carl Whitman's Gay Manifesto, he ends the Gay Manifesto with a quote from Herbert Marcuse. Herbert Marcuse, his most famous work is, he's known most for his two works, one being One Dimensional Man and the other Eros and Civilization. Eros, when you go back to the late 1700s with the French intellectuals, there was this connection, or so they believe, many of the leading French philosophers at the time, that there was a connection between creativity and sex, this idea of Eros, passion, and creativity. This was a counter, many of the French philosophers believed, to the other branches of Enlightenment thought that were coming out of other parts of Europe, such as England and such and so forth. When Chad said something, and I forgot what he said, but it made me write this down. It's about each individual. And I think Chad is right when he says that some know, perhaps some don't know. And I think that for those that do know that what they are promoting will result in chaos, do not care, because chaos to them is the truth of the matter. And this is why men like Glenn Loury, even though he says some things that are correct, ultimately Glenn Loury is a fool to me, especially when he remarks on topics such as religion and Christianity, because he does not understand that human beings will not simply rest on the comfortability and the utility that is afforded to them by way of the myth. Remember, he says that I do understand the power of the myth, but don't expect me to believe that. You see, when you look at the social order, and make no mistake about it, when we use such terms as capitalism, yes, people like you and I here, we're talking about the free market system. But capitalism, as Karl Marx would define it, is a multitude of ideas that go underneath this whole umbrella that we refer to as capitalism. And the idea of capitalism are things that actually protect the interests of the class at any given epoch that owns the means of production. So when you think about religious thought, this is why, we fast forward to the 20th century, when you start talking about, cultural Marxism and all these kinds of things, they start to attack other aspects of civilization. And this is the whole critical push, right? And we have critical theory of all sorts, right? And this was the idea, because certain such things as religion, law, art, entertainment, on and on and on and on. All of these institutions serve first and foremost to protect and give legitimacy to the participants in the particular, epoch at the time, or whatever political or social context one finds themselves in. All of those institutions are set up to grant legitimacy to the system as it currently stands. And everything from there, because of that reality, all of those things have to be challenged and destroyed. And the idea, and this goes back to Rousseau, this is why I start off mentioning the French philosophers of the late 1700s, Jean-Jacques Rousseau being the most famous among them. One of his most famous quotes is that we must find a way to return the savage to the city. And what he means is that he enjoyed city life. He enjoyed the things that societal order could bring to a person who wanted to indulge in his vice, but he did not want to play the game, so to speak, in order to maintain that which he felt was illusory, because the true, goal of man is to find the transcendental or the transcendent ideas such as God, etc. And the only way for a human being to do that is for a human being to reach back into the deep recesses of his own creativity and find transcendence within himself. And so when you go down the centuries, this is how this will become the defining theme of Marxism by the 1960s, thanks to Herbert Marcuse and thanks to another man by the name of Michel Foucault, who is, again, he is considered to be a postmodernist. But in fact, the very term and concept of postmodernism was first put into the popular lexicon by an architect, in fact, named Charles Jenks. But to get back to Michel Foucault, to answer Chad's question about normalizing queerness, not trying to, of course, I ain't trying to come at my boy Chad, but I just want to go to kind of add even further to that, because that's a contradiction. Because you don't want to normalize queer, because once queer becomes normal, then queer is no longer queer. So you must find a new kind of queer, because queer is defined in opposition to what is in fact normal. This is according to one of the founders of queer theory, or I think it may even been the person who actually coined the term queer theory, a man by the name of David Halpern, who wrote a book titled Saint Foucault, a sexual hagiography, which was a deep dive into the life and work of Michel Foucault, who became an icon of the New Left, because it was Michel Foucault's ideas and his existential ideas and this whole notion that there is no truth. There is no truth. There is no right, right? And so queer theory owns a great deal to Michel Foucault, and David Halpern in his book Saint Foucault would define queer as an identity without an essence. So queer is not to be objectified because no one knows what it is. So when Marx talks about communism, When Rousseau talks about how we were born free but are everywhere in chains, the idea of the left, and this is where we get into the whole notion of to be critical, into critique, into critique, into critique, into nothing is left, because they seek to bring man back to some mythical place that actually existed in their minds, where nothing existed but man, his own thoughts, his own will, and nothing else, because everything else is simply artificial. Even if that means living in a state of chaos, they would much rather live in a state of chaos, because they believe that that particular state of chaos is where mankind really belongs. That's where he truly is. And to live in this whole thing where we have these rules and regulations, whether we're guided by Christianity, our faith, and this and that, that is a false world to the Gnostic Marxists. That's the fake world. The real world is a world without those things, even if that world means chaos. And lastly, Michel Foucault was gay himself. In fact, died, I forgot what year he died exactly, but he would go on to die of AIDS himself, as did Carl Whitman.
Blanche, Chuck, somebody just said on IG, Chuck is giving a masterclass on how to research. Indeed. Folks, by the way, before Quisha picks up the hosting of tonight's ordeal, and I do call it an ordeal because we are unfortunately going through the DNC speeches, which is painstaking. You'll see at the bottom of all of our squares here, our little rectangles, Cash App. So if you feel so inclined to bless us with some of your monetary resources, we'll be so appreciative of it, because coming on every Sunday and doing this show, taking time from our busy schedules and from our families, we enjoy the conversation. We enjoy getting to see each other virtually every Sunday, but at the same time, all of this stuff, it does take time and it does take effort. So, so money goes a long way, it really does. I want to get into some of these supers. Let's see here. Let's get to some of the supers so we can continue on with the show. Blanche, you want to go ahead and take a stab at all of our supers, or yeah.
First one is Patrina John P. Dot. Thank you for the contribution.
Oh, by the way, sorry. Folks, if you haven't already, like this stream. We're streaming right now on IG, YouTube, Twitter, Rumble, and Facebook. I think are all the streaming platforms that we're on right now. So if you haven't already, please take the time to like this stream, maybe share the stream.
Twitch.
And Twitch. Yeah, we are on Twitch as well. So if you haven't already, please like and subscribe and share. We'll be very appreciative of that. Thank you. Go ahead, Blanche.
Okay. Jesus loves you. God bless the chat. Quisha, Chad, Chuck, and Blanche. Thank you. SPRS Smoke. Love you guys. Thank you so much. Jerome B. Blessings. Thank you so much. Sub-Zero. Chad, you never answered. Give me up, fam.
My bad. I'll call you back tomorrow. I promise.
Thank you so much. If y'all want to just ask Chad, just keep donating. Just ask. No one is talking about banning IVF. That is not a discussion. No, kids don't know what they are. They need to be guided by their parents. That's Derek Perry.
I don't really care for IVF, to be honest with you.
We talked about that before.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine that Trump is for it. It's fine that many Republicans are for it. Speaking as an individual, I'm not for it, but that's just my personal opinion. Go ahead, Blanche.
Rena Bina, I called and asked my grandmother who she might like to vote for, and the whole demon reached out through the phone to scratch my throat. The trauma, fight the good fight. I love you all.
Oh, we love you too. Thank you.
Idris Singleton, great topic. Thanks for doing this live. I tagged you on Facebook, Quisha, and followers. Please let us know and the viewers know about your products?
Oh, yes, Gold Lush. If you have skin issues, right here. God Stuff Beauty.
Keisha.
I'll put it in the chat. Thank you. Yes.
Keisha, send me a bottle of that. My I don't have great skin. Send me a bottle of it. If it works, I'm going to promote it on my IG. I've been selling my hats, my company hats, and because people have been complimenting me everywhere I go. Hey, do you have any of those available?
Yeah,
and
I
it's
like
one of
that.
those things. I haven't like, it wasn't my idea to start selling them, but I got enough compliments that I was like, you know what? Let me go ahead and start selling these. And I've actually sold quite a few of them. So Keisha, if you want to send me that a bottle of your product, because you know your boy can use some good skincare product. If it works, I'll be more than happy to promote it on my socials. So
And we can go to the link. Can we go to the link on your page, Keisha, your IG page? The link to the site to sell where you sell the product? I think you're
muted, Keisha.
Oh. Yes, you can go there. It's at God Stuff Beauty on IG.
Okay.
Thank you, Idris.
96 to life. Looking for love, acceptance, meaning, and purpose. Apart from Christ, we are focused to find it in the people, places, and things of the world in sin. All right, thank you for the contribution.
100%.
Michelle McCon, I won't say Macon. We're living in Romans 1.
Why did you want to say Macon?
I don't know. I just feel like it's probably McCon. I don't know. I just feel like it's not Macon. We're living in Romans 1, 18 through 32, and they are without excuse. I'm amazed that so many Christians are accepting of the DNC's foolishness.
Mm.
Yeah,
they are because the church is.
Right.
Derek Perry, no true Christian accepts the DNC or their platform. I agree.
You're 100% correct, and a lot of so-called Christians were at the DNC. A lot of pastors were at the DNC. A lot of pastors are promoting Kamala and her platforms. Raphael Warnock being chief among them. So that's a very touchy subject, Blanche. What do you think? I mean, this whole concept of evangelicals for Kamala, Christians for Kamala, Catholics for Kamala. I mean, you've seen the whole gamut. I mean,
Yeah,
is it safe to say
hiding.
that they aren't genuinely Christian? Like, I don't know. What say you? I mean, the Bible does say that you can't be a friend of the world and a friend of God, that you can't love both God and the world. I mean, to me, the Bible is blatantly clear. It says that they're in black and white. Yet and still, a lot of these so-called Christians are promoting not only Kamala, but all of the Tower of Babel-esque rhetoric that she's espousing. I guess my question for you, Blanche, is, do you think that they are really Christian? But then on the flip side of that, I guess my follow-up question would be, those who, Christians who are promoting Trump, are they, is their salvation, is their Christian faith to be questioned as well? I mean, as they would in turn say? What say you?
I mean, honestly, you could make an argument for both. You could say if you were a true Christian, you wouldn't vote for Trump, and if you were a true Christian, you wouldn't vote for Kamala. But I think the difference is that if we're talking about, who selects the leaders, we're talking about God and where the government rests on, God's shoulders. And so I believe that if you're a believer, you're voting for the best leadership of the country. We just talked about, these leaders being 100% Christian, 100% believers. That's not going to happen because they're not. So to me, you're voting for the actual leadership of the country. And also you'd vote for a government that would allow you to be able to worship freely and allow you to be able to, follow God. But I would still say that if you listen to the pastors talking about voting for Kamala, they're not saying anything biblical as to why they're supporting her, or even they're talking about she's a black woman, Trump is bad. Like their rhetoric isn't tied. Like they're not going to be able to preach a sermon about why you should vote for Kamala. They're not going to be able to do it. So what they'll do is they'll say vote for Kamala and hide behind she's black, she's qualified. You know, all these talking points. I remember Pastor Darby one time said that he said if he was to vote, he said he would vote for Trump, and he said he would vote for Trump just based on his stance on abortion. And so, you know, you can make an argument either way, but I believe there's no argument to be made to vote for Kamala as a believer. Zero.
Right,
It's
right,
like
right.
you can't make any. You can kind of argue with Trump, but hers is no argument. It's like no, there's no way.
They are.
They're blatantly. Their platform is blatantly against the word of God. I mean, it's like it's blatant, and their two main issues are abortion and LGBTQ. I mean, that's their platform. Those are the two main things they want to put, and taking somebody else's money.
They are hostile to the word of God. Right. No. You're 100% correct. You're 100% correct, Quisha. I mean, they are hostile to the word of God. God's word says one thing. They're promoting something completely antithetical to that. They are fruitless, and therefore they're not Christians. I mean that's a bold thing to say, but it's 100% true. I mean, you're either going to promote God's word or you're not going to, and they aren't. And so it doesn't matter how much Christianese they use. It doesn't matter what garments they wear, the pastoral cloth, if you will. For everything that they posture themselves as or present themselves as, they are not actively promoting the word of God. Therefore, they're not leading people to Christ. They're leading people rather to a political agenda that's antithetical to the word of God.
Mm-hmm.
And what's Kamala's slogan? What is it? What's their slogan?
Kamala for the people.
Joy.
Yeah. So like, again, they're going to argue that she's for America and Trump is like, so these pastors are just going to hide behind, like, you know, she's for the people. President Trump is not. She cares about us. He, you know, just that whole back and forth of him being against America. She's for, I don't know, all that nonsense. But there's no way, like Quisha said, that you can even vote for it, because they're literally, every time they get on the microphone, it's talking about abortion. Like it's like every time everybody's talking about abortion. I'm like, my goodness, y'all just, if we have all these abortions, there ain't gonna be any people on the planet. I mean, it's gonna be a desolate America. This is crazy.
I have a question for Quisha,
I think that's what they want.
I have a question for
Yeah.
Quisha, though. She's our resident nuance
Lady.
whisperer.
Oh, gotcha. Yes.
So, I mean, I don't know. What say you when it comes to, I mean, because we know that when it comes to the Raphael Warnocks of the world and the Jamal Bryants of the world, these are individuals who have spent enough time in the scriptures to know what God's word says, to know what God desires or what he demands, I would say, of not only those of us who are his remnant, but also to those of us who call ourselves trying to be teachers and priests and pastors and ministers, such and so forth. However, when it comes to the layperson, one who genuinely wants to follow Christ, but are confused by the rhetoric of someone who seemingly is a man of the cloth, like a Warnock or a Sharpton or whomever, someone who said, you know, who will get up there and espouse so much scripture, but then, you know, intertwine within their so-called sermons such rhetoric as social justice and Marxism and so on and so forth. And because they're trying to be good disciples, latch on to the rhetoric of the Jamal Bryants and of the TD Jakeses and of the Raphael Warnocks. I guess my question for you, Quisha, is how do you talk to such individuals who aren't sure what to make of it? You know what I mean? Who are so, I guess, credulous or gullible to go along with what Raphael Warnock and others are saying. I know what my answer to that question is. My answer is it doesn't matter so much what Warnock is saying. It doesn't matter so much what Sharpton is saying. I'm not going to meet them, quote unquote, where they are. Rather, I'm going to unapologetically promote the scriptures and promote what saith the Lord, irrespective of what the other noise and nonsense is. But, you know, I know you have traditionally been one to point out the nuance, to point out the gray area, as it were. What would you say is the appropriate way to meet these people who just are confused?
Well, that's probably the place that I don't have nuance. The Bible is very clear what the Bible says. Like, I don't have that. I mean, it's especially when it comes to these issues. I mean, these people are explicitly wicked. You can literally go to the Bible and see it's not complicated. This is willful. It is willful wickedness. And I said this on my live earlier today, like, you can literally say no. Like, you could do a radical thing and be like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to check that box. It's literally checking a box and saying, I'm not going to co-sign this wickedness. But that's why I call it a cult, because you have Christians. Dayon says, I didn't expect Quisha to have a nuanced response to this subject. Because I mean, for me on this, it is what it is. You can't, there is no nuance there. You are either for God or you're not. And his word says you're either hot or you're cold, because the Bible is very simple, actually. It's a very simple concept. It's, you know, we're flawed. We need a savior. God provided that savior. Here are the stipulations of having access to that salvation. It's a really simple concept. And then
bless you, Quisha. Bless you for saying that. Bless you for saying that. I mean, and I agree 100%. I mean, Chuck, do you agree? Okay. Do you agree that the Bible is simple?
Sorry, I was.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that it's simple. I mean, on the points that, the points that you guys are making, I know that, we have people who spend their entire lives studying the Bible. We have, biblical scholars and theologians and what have you. It's a task. It's quite a task to really know every nuance, every nook and cranny, and to make sense out of everything that you read, and to make sense out of everything that is being said. And, of course, I'm not one of these people who say, well, you need to be able to understand the Greek, the Hebrew, and the this and the that in order to get the true meaning. That kind of stuff always comes by way of people who just want to find a reason not to believe. It said, well, this has been misquoted and mistranslated. You don't even know what it actually says, and yada, yada, yada. But yeah, I think it is, it is simple. And it's simple for someone like me, most certainly. Yeah,
one of the most profound things I've ever heard Blanche say, and he says a lot of profound things. I mean, the man is full of wit and wisdom. But one of the most profound things I ever heard Blanche Robinson say is, when it comes to people don't care about the inner workings of anything that they buy, that they consume. When they buy a car, they don't care.
They want to know, right? They want to know everything.
Yeah.
Right.
When it comes to the Bible, they want to know everything. They want to know, like their quality and their standards for accepting God's word as authoritative is supremely higher than anything else that they consume on a daily basis. They're more than ready to receive and believe Taylor Swift, believe Kamala Harris, believe Barack Obama, believe Ricky Smiley, whomever the case may be. They take them at face value, but they're not willing to take the Lord or Christ at face value. They're not willing to take the Bible, the scriptures at face value. They want to, well, what about slavery? Well, what about this? Well, what about that? Then they have all these questions. Go ahead with your question, Chuck.
I just wanted to ask Derek Perry, if you don't mind, just put it in the chat. Just want to get clarification. You said that as a pastor, your job is to understand the Greek, the Hebrew, and the Aramaic. That is your job. I was just wondering, like, when you said as a pastor, is that like a pastor's job, or that's like a layperson, like everyone should learn those languages? I'm just, curious. I'm not trying to debate. I mean, you said a lot of intelligent things in the chat, so I want to know what you think. I'm willing to take your guidance on this. Should I dedicate? I mean, of course, it doesn't hurt to learn the language, but I'm just simply saying that if someone wants to be a Christian, are you saying that they ought to learn the Greek and the Hebrew and the Aramaic? Is that like mandatory, or is that a must?
The pastor's
Or is that
job
much for
is-
pastors?
I don't think it's mandatory, but it helps.
But I was kind of confused on the context, because I didn't know that he was saying as a pastor, that's what a pastor should do, or is he saying as a pastor, he is saying that it applies to the general public? You get what I'm saying? I'm kind of losing the context. He said the pastor.
As if he's a pastor, like as a pastor,
I say this, or
Yeah.
as a pastor should, but he did answer. He said that's the pastor's job, not necessarily the lay person. Okay, I just wanted to get some clarification on that. I mean, I wasn't going to disagree with you either way. If you said lay people should learn the language too, I'd have been like, okay, I'm not going to argue with you. I wouldn't know.
It does help
My
to
spiritual
know
father
that
definitely taught me to know what does it say in the Hebrew, what does it say in the Greek, and to know
because words are important.
To know who you're speaking, who the writer was speaking to at the time, to get a clear picture of what that passage is actually trying to communicate. So I think it's certainly helpful to look back on the different languages, because it can have really different meanings.
Yeah, exactly. Words are very important. I mean, I know in the English language we have numerous versions of the Bible. We have the NLT, the NIV, the ESV, the KJV, the NKJV, the Message. I mean, you have numerous translations of the Bible, and truth be told, some of the true meaning of the scriptures get lost in translation. But I believe too that the word isn't merely what's on paper, but it's also in spirit as well, spirit and truth. And the fact is, I mean, to Quisha's point, it is simple. I mean, that's to be sure. However, it's also too very mysterious.
Yeah.
Someone who genuinely isn't looking for God, someone who isn't seeking His face, it can be a puzzle. For one who has a love of money, for one who has a love of materialism and consumption, for one who loves the world, for one who does not wish to really find answers, it is mysterious. It is quite puzzling. But that to me is very fascinating. It's so simple, but yet it's so mysterious, Anyway.
And the word is alive. And so, you can read a scripture when you're 18 years old and read it when you're 25 years old, and it have a whole different meaning to you, and different meaning. Like, to me, the Bible is not just, it's a living word. So to me, it like cuts going in and cuts when you pull it back out. So like these scriptures that we read throughout our lives have different kind of meanings and different kind of interpretation as the older we get, as the more we just, I read this my whole life but never saw it like this, so I feel like the Bible is unique in that sense. Most other religions are centered around a person's what they do with the word they got, versus our belief starts with internal, your mind being renewed, your flesh being subjected. Then we go out there and do, but even our doing isn't with the so-called reward. We're just doing it because it's what God commands us to do. We're not doing things in hopes to, get these wonderful things. We're doing it because it's what God requires. I just find with these other religions and this new age stuff, it's more appealing because it's almost like they're promising you something immediately. If you do this, if you burn at this little altar with the sage and you're gonna be able to free up the spirits. If you put it's like all this stuff, and it's like an immediate fix for a problem they have in their life. But in actuality, it doesn't really change or convict the person. You're just doing something to kind of get something accomplished. It's just like people saying if you tithe this 10%, you're gonna be rich. If you tithe, you do this, you know what I'm saying? It's just almost like it's a deed, it's like a favor for a favor type of thing. I'm gonna do this for you, Lord, do this for me. And that's not really how this thing really works.
100%. I'm gonna save the rest of the supers for later, so we can move on with the show. Again, folks, please like the show. Please share the show. We'd be greatly appreciative of that. And again, you see all of our cash apps here if you feel so inclined to contribute. Go ahead, Chuck. After Chuck, we're going to give it back to Quisha to move on with the show.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of slightly related. I think Blanche and Quisha nailed it, so I won't give my 2 cents because I pretty much agree with them about the question of Christians. And I think that your question was something to the effect of can a true Christian be a Democrat, or would be at the Democrat National Commission or whatever. I think that was pretty much the gist of your question about like Christians and how could a true Christian be a Democrat? Okay.
Yeah.
Just to kind of bring it back to politics a little bit, because everyone looks at Trump and they talk about his faults and what have you. Do I think that Donald Trump is a saved man? I don't know. Is Donald Trump an honorable man? Is he an ethical man? He can be, and for the most part, I think he is. But I don't know him personally, so I'm limited in what I can actually say definitively. Do I think he's an evil man or a wicked man? No, I don't. If I had to give an answer, but I don't know if he's a saved man, and that's not. It's not my. I don't think I'm in a position. It's not me. I'm not in a position to say, and I don't know if it even matters if I think Donald Trump is a saved man, or what will become of him when he leaves this world. I don't know. I've done too much wickedness. I've done too many bad things, and I'm going to continue to fall short, as they say. And so I'm the last one to preach and lecture to anybody. But I know wickedness for sure when I see it. And part of the reason why, for me, just briefly, when I first saw Trump, when he made his first speech, I think when he talked about how Mexico is not sending us their best. They're sending us rapists and so on. And I think the Bible somewhere in the book of Proverbs, I don't know the chapter and verse. Blanchard, Chad, or Keisha can probably pull it up. Blanche might know it. It's a scripture people often quote. It talks about how the wicked flee when no one is in pursuit, but the righteous are as bold as lions. And you got to be bold, even if, especially when you're talking about the truth of the gospel, right? You have to be bold, and that flies in the face of political correctness. And when Donald Trump made that statement, and when the media said that he called all Mexicans rapists, I said they're lying. It's not what he said. And I said, now, wait a minute. I said, so who am I? I'm just this guy going through life. I'm just a regular person. Donald Trump is this famous, billionaire real estate mogul / celebrity / TV mogul and all this stuff. And this is what they're trying to do to him based upon something that he said. And I said, now, wait a minute. Am I supposed to pretend? Am I supposed to live this illusion that I actually live in a free country when one is not even allowed to speak? And we've been living with this monster for a very, very long time. This is what the whole civil rights industrial complex has developed into. It is developed into this federal, this kind of fascistic, federally mandated bureaucratic police state, surveillance state. And much of it has to do with what you think and what you say. And if your speech is no longer free, then neither is your thought, right? You think in terms of words, and if your speech is no longer free, then your thoughts are no longer free as well. And so if Donald Trump means anything in a positive sense, from a positive point of view to this country, is this is somewhat of an example of what one should do if they have a want or a drive to stand up and be bold and to speak the truth. He doesn't say everything that you want him to say. Some of the things he says may offend you. He ain't never offended me because, like I said, I'm low down anyway, so I'm cool with it, right? But all jokes aside, I said that Donald Trump marks a massive blow against political correctness. And from that point on, we can handle the rest. Just make it to where we can start thinking freely again. Make it to where we can start speaking again and taking on evil, because it all starts with the word. I'm not talking about the religious word per se, but that too. But if you can't speak, and if only one side, the political correctness, the repressive tolerance that Herbert Marcuse talked about, the racism that Jean-Paul Sartre preached about back in the 1940s, if you can't speak up and fight against that, then we're doomed. So I said that I think I'm going to support that guy, because if he can't say what he wants to say without being lied on and smeared and told that he's a racist and a bigot and a such and so forth, then what chance do I have? I'm done.
You're muted, Quisha. Quisha, you're muted. We can't hear a thing you're saying.
All we can do is see that diamond. So.
But I said, you guys know that it is getting to be that time for me tonight. Yeah. But I wanted to, did you guys remember when Michelle Obama, I don't think that this was in the clip, but did you guys hear when she said something about us being self-determined, Did you pick that up, Chad? Did y'all see that?
She said something to the effect
Chad,
of, yeah, she's saying something to the effect of,
what did she say?
What did
she say?
She said a Marxist term. She said that we are all self-determined. And I was like, oh, Chuck is going to eat this up.
But
I was wondering if you guys had seen that or heard what she said.
Man, I'm seeing these clips from the DNC for the first time here now. I didn't watch it, so I don't know.
I think this is it.
Every sentence.
A monopoly on what it means to be an American. No one. Kamala has shown her allegiance to this nation, not by spewing anger and bitterness, but by living a life of service. She understands that most of us will never be afforded the grace of failing forward. We will never benefit from the affirmative action of generational wealth. If we bankrupt a business or choke in a crisis, we don't get a second, third, or fourth chance. We don't have the luxury of whining or cheating others to get further ahead. No. We don't get to change the rules so we always win. If we see one has a monopoly on what it means to be an American, no one.
I don't think that's it, but go ahead.
Her allegiance to this nation.
But anyway, I just thought it was interesting how communistic this all sounded. The whole thing, it was just like you know, with Kamala and her ideas, this whole thing is just like, let's just bring it on home. We don't have to hide anymore of our, you know, our communist dreams and aspirations and our just wonderful government ruled utopia. We don't have to hide this thing anymore. Like, we can just put it right on display.
Yeah.
And I
smack dab in the center of the discourse.
That's right. Like, why hide it? You know, we're saying all these things and nobody's really pushing back like that.
Well, Quisha, how about what Bill Clinton said? How about what Bill Clinton said?
I have a hard time believing this, but so help me, I triple checked it. Since the end of the Cold War in 1989, America has created about 51 million new jobs. I swear I checked this 3 times. Even I couldn't believe it. What's the score? Democrats 50, Republicans 1.
I did not understand that. Like,
I didn't know a zombie could talk.
First of all, it's the greatest job interview for the greatest job in the world. Secondly, the Constitution says we, the people, get to do the hiring. And the third thing is that every 4 years, we get to change the requirements for the job. So here's what I'm thinking. because I try to apply this in every election. Will this president take us backward or forward? Will this president give our kids a brighter future? Will this president bring us together or tear us apart? Will the president increase the peace, security, and stability and freedom that we enjoy and extend it to others as we can? And every 4 years, the people come up to candidates and they say, as they're saying now, here are our problems, solve them. Here are our opportunities, seize them. Here are our fears, ease them. Here are our dreams, help them come true. So in 2024, we got a pretty clear choice, it seems to me. Kamala Harris for the people, and the other guy who's proved that he's about me, myself, and I.
Here are our problems, solve them. Here are our fears, ease them. Like who's asking the president to do such a thing? Again, freeloaders, the unproductive element of society, statists, individuals who believe that it's not their responsibility, but rather the government's responsibility to pay their bills, to raise their children, such and so forth. No, that's your responsibility. It's your responsibility. And that's why I think shows like ours are so unpopular. If I'm being honest with you, Chuck, Quisha, and Blanche, that's why our show is so unpopular, because we promote personal responsibility. We tell you Trump is not going to do it for you. Kamala is not going to do it for you. Joe Biden is not going to do it for you. It's your responsibility. This whole notion that the government is responsible for child care. If you laid up and did the dirty and had the children, those children are your responsibility. That doesn't give you the right to kill them so that way you can, be able to pursue a career. No, you have. I mean, sex leads to childbirth. It just is what it is. So, and so again, that's your responsibility. If you want to live in this house and have this electric bill and have this water bill, pay for it. If you can't afford it, get a roommate like the Hispanics and the Asians do until you can afford it. Be a responsible individual. Be a responsible human being. Why isn't that being promoted? And to the extent that you have individuals like J.D. Vance promoting personal responsibility, oh, he's weird. Oh, he's strange. Mm-hmm. It's like, no. Where are the politicians who are willing to promote responsibility? People like J.D. Vance, people like Larry Elder, and others, few and far in between that I've seen. It's your responsibility. Why are Americans so childish that they shrivel up at the sound of personal responsibility? Right. And rather than the DNC promoting personal responsibility, they're in a demagogue type way exploiting people's desire to be taken care of, desire for the government to take care of them. They're exploiting that and promising something that they can't deliver on. It makes for a dysfunctional and chaotic society when you promise people that you're going to lower the cost of housing, lower the cost of medicine, lower the cost of this, lower cost of that, provide all of their needs and desires and wants. That makes for a chaotic society, because folks like me, a small business owner, folks like Quisha, a small business owner, folks like Chuck and Blanche, who are, Chuck in particular, who's providing for his family, working 2 jobs to do so. Folks like Blanche, who is courting a young lady and who is, pursuing marriage and is taking care of his responsibilities. I'm not trying to put anybody on blast, but my point is this. It's not even about that. Listen, right. It's not about that. Listen, my point in saying all that is we all have personal responsibilities. It's Chuck's job to take care of Chuck and Michelle and his kids. It's Quisha's job to take care of her affairs and her marriage and her kids. It's my responsibility to take care of my wife and my kids. It's Blanche's responsibility to take care of his family and his affairs. It's your responsibility. Why is that such a strange and weird thing to say in this day and age? But yet you have You have Bill Clinton sitting up there saying, look, you know, we all you want to go to Kamala Harris and you want to, you know, say, hey, here's my dreams, here's my aspirations, solve them for me. Like, no, that's not real life. That causes a derailing of American society. That's not going to make you happy. That's not going to make you prosperous. When, you know, to the extent that the government is giving $25,000 for a down payment for your home, to the extent that the government is, is relieving your student debt, to the extent that the government is just dishing out all this taxpayer-funded money to pay for things that you should be taking care of yourself, that causes an implosion on our society, not only on our society economically, but also morally, spiritually, so on and so forth. Because people like myself who are productive, it de-incentivizes my desire to get out there and work. And of course, because I'm a man, and particularly a man of God, I'm still going to work and take care of my family. But it makes the society such to where it's more difficult to do so, because my money is having to take care of everybody else who is unproductive. These people, as I said last week, is an unproductive person's wet dream, because you have the government who's willing to rob from people like me to take care of people who aren't willing to pull their own weight to make a living. It's not your responsibility, federal government, to provide people's needs. It's their responsibility. And the fact that you're getting up there on a national stage at the DNC and promoting your ability to take care of people's needs, it makes for a dysfunctional society. It makes for a society that will implode. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I don't know. This to me is beyond asinine. It's I don't know. I don't know.
It's pathetic.
When
Pathetic.
in
But in order for me to keep my ring, I got
All right, Keisha, see you later.
Yes, I'm gonna have to dip out, you guys. But thank you for watching, and I will see you on Sunday.
Later, Keisha.
Get you some.
Yeah, I was gonna say, in 60, 63, 64, whatever year it was, when Betty Friedan released The Feminine Mystique, she defined the feminism or sexism. She defined it as a problem without a name. Well, she didn't use the term sexism because it wasn't a popular term, if anyone had even thought of it. Of course, they appropriated the civil rights, these black issues, if you will, and turned them into women's issues. In the early 60s, Betty Friedan had no name for it. She herself referred to it as a problem without a name. I think that's a quote from The Feminine Mystique. And in 1968, Caroline Bird would coin the term sexism, defining it as using sex as a means to judge a person when sex does not matter. And when you think of other isms or forms of discrimination, racism, classism, whatever, Jesse Lee Peterson likes to say homophobism or homophobia, right? But no, seriously though, sex, the problem with Caroline Bird's assessment is that, when she's comparing sex to race or comparing sex to class, this kind of discrimination, the problem is sex matters in ways that race does not, because there is, in fact, a biological reality to sex that is not present when you start talking about racial discrimination. And this is why the activists went to great lengths to try and circumvent these biological imperatives, because the fact of the matter is that no matter how much Betty Friedan droned on and Gloria Steinem and these types droned on, there is a reality about sex, and that reality does largely determine our roles in the society. And this is something that feminists have always decried, going back centuries even. And so how do we fix that problem? Again, I mentioned earlier, I talked about the advent of the birth control pill. the Roe versus Wade decision in 1973. And then you fast forward a couple of decades later, Chad being a businessman, you had certain laws passed, like, the FMLA, I think, Act. I think that was 1992, 1993, right? That established this rule that if you are an employer who has more than 50 employees living within a 75-mile radius, you had to provide up to, 12 weeks of paid leave if a child is born, or, and there are other stipulations that are involved as well. But for the most part, we know that when a child is born, a woman gets to take maternity leave. And so they say, well, we want women in the workforce, right? Because we want women to be in charge of the financial destinies and such and so forth, because women were tied to men by and large, because men offered them protection vis-a-vis resources and so forth, right? But there's still, once again, that biological hurdle there, because women do have children, women bear children, and so instead of saying, well, in order to have a social safety net, right, in the form of a primary institution like a family, if you can't work, don't want to work, that's why you have a husband. No, instead, I think that this kind of stuff incentivizes single mothers, because they can, in fact, forego getting married, have children, work a job, have the child, go home, bond with the child, and still get paid thanks to we, the taxpayers. And so it's instead of saying, okay, well, you should, as a woman, right? It's wrong, right? J.D. Vance said our country is being run by a bunch of disgruntled cat ladies, which is true. Again, political correctness. Can't say it, but we all know it's true. And so if you urge a woman to get married, then that is sexism, the problem without a name, right? But instead, when you say, well, Chad is sexist for suggesting this, Blanchard is sexist for suggesting this, that a woman needs to get married, and her first and primary, what should be most important to a woman is her duties as a wife, we're wrong. But while we are being told we're wrong, we then, to Chad's point, are being forced to pay for a woman's decision to forego household responsibilities to go and work in someone's job. And we got to pay for that. It's like, you pay for my child care expenses. You do it. It's like, no, go home, be a wife, and let your husband take up the majority, or not just the majority because you're not working. Let him take 100% of that. Let him bear that burden on his Atlas-like shoulders. No, I want you, who didn't sleep with me, who doesn't know me, who isn't married to me, isn't obligated to me at all, to pay for my child care and my child rearing expenses, because I can't work anymore because I don't have a child. You should have a husband. I don't even know you, but I got to pay for it, you see. Because that's the world we live in the world of equality between men and women, equality of the races, equality, equality, equality. This is the perverted world that we live in. Stealing people's property in the name of equality.
What a mess. I mean, you hit the nail right on the head. We're about to land a plane, folks. But before we do, I wanted to play these 2 quick clips. And then we'll get some closing remarks, and we'll close it out after reading the supers. Let's start with this one by D.L. Hughley. Let's see. Where's it go?
I can tell you this. I don't blame Donald Trump for not wanting to debate Kamala. I've been married to a black woman for 40 years, and I ain't won one debate. I'm owing $93,000. Now, of course, Trump is saying that Kamala isn't black. I guarantee you this, Kamala's been black a lot longer than Trump's been a Republican. And if he keeps sliding in the polls the way he is, the only way he can keep Kamala out of the White House is if he buys it and refuses to rent it to her. Of course, Kamala's getting broad support. They got black men for Kamala, white men for Kamala, Latinos and Asians for Kamala. They even have Republicans for Kamala. Kamala knows the truth about the American dream, that hard work is not enough. Hard work alone is not enough to succeed. You need access and
In Kamala Harris, we have a chance to elect a president who is for the middle class because she is from the middle class. She understands the urgency of rent checks and groceries and prescriptions. She is as committed to our reproductive and civil rights as she is to taking on corporate greed. In Kamala Harris, I see a leader who understands. I see a leader with a real commitment to a better future for working families. And Chicago, we have to help her win. Because we know that Donald Trump would sell this country for $1 if it meant lining his own pockets and greasing the palms of his Wall Street friends. And I, for one, am tired of hearing about how a two-bit union buster thinks of himself as more of a patriot than the woman who fights every single day to lift working people out from under the boots of greed, trampling on our way of life.
So,
it's so fake, man. I'm like, it's disgusting, man. Oh.
What's irritating to me is that, like, so she didn't mention it in that clip, but she did mention it in her speech, the American dream. And you heard D.L. Hughley also make reference to the so-called American dream. And it's interesting to me because on the one hand, these people claim to be for the American dream, but then they'll turn around and they'll disparage the whole idea of becoming rich, right? So on the one hand, they'll disparage the American dream, which for many people means becoming rich enough to fund their own way of living, to fund their retirement and having enough money to fund their children's, startup, if you will, and also to have enough to leave an inheritance for their children. So when it comes to productive folks, that's their idea of having the American dream. So on the one hand, these Democrats, they claim to be for the American dream, but at the same time, they disparage the whole concept of becoming rich, when the reality is when they go after the rich, they are at the same time going after the aspirations of many of us to become financially comfortable enough to take care of our own families. So the reality is, they're not really for the American dream. They're for rations. They're for basically everybody being, I guess, the equivalency of being in a gulag where, from each according to their ability to each according to their need, everybody being on the equal playing field. No such thing as a middle class, no such thing as, those who are more ambitious and have something to offer the world in terms of our skill, in terms of our ability. It just so happens that, if you have a skill, if you have an ability that is useful in the marketplace, you're going to receive more capital resources than those who don't. That's just a fact of the nature. That's the way the cookie crumbles. And they are against this idea of some folks having more than other folks. And so they're disparaging the whole idea of capitalism and of being able to make money. And I don't have to be in the 1% to be alarmed by what it is D.L. Hughley and AOC are saying. Because once again, when it comes to my own business, when it comes to my own ambitions, I'm not hoarding up wealth. I mean, I'm not going to tell the right hand what the left is doing, but I do my fair share of charity. I'm not going to tell you what I do because that's not important. That's between me and the entities that I give to. But it's not as if I'm this monopoly guy who is, trying to hoard up as much wealth as I can and am doing so while exploiting other folks. Like, that's not how this works. But I shouldn't have to explain that one way or the other to you, D.L. Hughley or AOC or Elizabeth Warren or whomever. Like, what I make, if I'm willing to go out there and make the money, that's my business. Mm-hmm. But again, the ability to put up money for myself, to put up money for retirement, to be able to fund and to invest in my own children's startup, to be able to invest or to leave them an inheritance, I would like very much to do that. And whenever the Democrats impose and implement these policies that go after the rich, yes, I am gone after too in that respect. It's not just the 1% they're going after. They're going after anyone who wants to put up money for themselves so they can have a quality of life. Because it is, after all, my responsibility to provide my quality of life. It's not the government's responsibility. Anyway, we're gonna pass it around for closing remarks, starting with you, Blanche.
Yes, the title, I guess, the DNC was a nightmare. Someone that I know told me that America would never be communist, and they said it with so much assurance. And I just want to ask them, well, who would be against it? What would be this force that would be against America being communist? Clearly, it wouldn't be the folks like you and the people that you know, because y'all are Democrats and liberals. So it wouldn't be you all fighting for America not to be communist. So who would be going, if America isn't going to be communist, who would be the people fighting against it? It would be the people that you all are demonizing.
That's right.
The folks against communism would be the folks that are quote unquote patriots, MAGA, conservative, Christian. Those are the people that would be against it. So it's funny that you're saying that they're bad, but all of a sudden when it comes to communism, you know deep down inside, they would be the ones to be a wall between communism and America. Then I talked to one guy and he said, well, I asked him about giving up his guns. And he said, well, I don't mind giving up my guns because I know that the Trump supporters would protect us. Now listen, he's anti-Trump, but he said, I know the supporters wouldn't allow them to just take over America. They wouldn't give their guns up. So I said, so basically what you're saying is you're really just spitting all this rhetoric as nonsense because you don't really believe it. You know, if push comes to shove, you're going to have to rely on those people that you were talking about are so bad and so racist. And so I bring that point up to just say that these people know deep down inside that the only people that really care about America, that truly would be willing to defend and die for America, are the very same people that they dislike and hate. And it's just funny that these people are acting like, you know, that this side of the aisle is so bad when they know good and well, if anything was happening on American soil, it wouldn't be AOC, it wouldn't be the Obamas, it wouldn't be Al Sharpton, it wouldn't be Hewley, it wouldn't be Walton. None of these people would take up any arms to defend this country. They wouldn't. It would be the very people that they have demonized and hated.
Yeah, Blanche, it's that last example right there, that last person, wow. I mean, they said that
he was a minister. He was a minister too.
And a minister, and looked at you and said it with a straight face. Said, "I'll give up my guns. I'm cool with that, because I know the hillbilly rednecks and all the black sellouts. I know, you know, middle America, flyover country. I know they'll protect me." Wow, you can't make this up. And probably goes on calling them racist or whatever, and expects them to put their lives on the line for him. The same way in which the majority of men who have died in war defending the freedoms of this country, whether you agree with every war the United States has fought or not, the majority have been poor, middle or lower middle class white men, make up the majority of war casualties. Poor white men. You expect them to go off and die for you. This is rich. And it's amazing too, because I know I'm not the only one, but you know, you don't even have to display a Trump flag or anything to that effect. If you just have an American flag or some red, white, and blue insignia, I automatically assume that, you know, you are a Republican, a conservative, or something, because we're to the point now where the American left, the very concept of patriotism offends them. The very idea of the American flag offends them. They find it offensive. And these are the people who want to govern over you. Mind you, the country as we define it is, in fact, its citizenry. Why would you turn over control of the government to people who hate you, who want to lecture you and tell you how low down and dirty, disgusting, despicable you are? You're bitter clingers. That's what Obama called you. You're a basket of deplorables. You belong in a basket of deplorables, to quote Hillary Clinton. And you would vote for them? You would let them govern you? Okay, that makes sense to me. For all this talk, the government, because that's what they seek. The AOC, Obama, Bernie Sanders, the whole kit. This is what they want. They're just simply trying to find a way to convince you to hand your money over to them, right? So they can essentially get their processing fee, right? So if I am the middleman between Blanche and Chad, if I'm going to take something from Chad and give it to Blanche, then I'm going to take that, whatever it may be, from Chad. Let's just say if I take $100 from Chad, if I walk it over to Blanche, if I got to walk 2 feet, I'm going to take 70 of that 100 as a processing fee for the work that I had to go through in order to process this transfer and get it over to you. So I'm going to take a cut out of it, right, as a processing fee. That's what the government does. They take money off the top. But capitalism, as we like to call it, is in fact a system of wealth and income redistribution, because that's what you do at the direct point of contact whenever you make a purchase. See, it's funny when they say all this stuff about rich people. I would like to ask these drunken, idiotic Marxists, when is the last time a poor person ever gave them a job? See, when you talk about rich people, whether you own a business or whether you're a W-4 employee and you work to earn a wage, that's fine. But why don't you let people work in order to earn a wage from someone who's rich and wealthy, as opposed to taking from the rich and wealthy person, right? And then passing it over to me whilst taking your cut for processing the transaction. Let me go directly to that rich person and convince them that I can do something for them. I can do something for you. If you just give me a little bit of your property, I don't need to bear the responsibility of the whole the whole edifice, but just give me a little bit of something, and I'll help you achieve your ends. But you just got to compensate me for my time. That's how you transfer wealth. You go out and you do something for somebody. And lastly, to Chad's point, when he was going around the table talking about how each and every last one of us do what we need to do in order to provide for ourselves and the dependents in our lives. It's funny because all of this talk about building a wall, they say that, well, Donald Trump, walls don't work. This is stupid. This is idiotic, and such and so forth. I'm gonna tell you right now, when Blanche asked his friends, talk about, well, communism will never come to the United States. Okay, you'll see what happens when all of the Chad O. Jacksons of the world say, I don't have to deal with this. And mind you, trust me, people like me, Chad, Blanche, we have the wherewithal and the resources to do so. If it comes down to it, I'm getting the heck out of here, because you ain't finna take from me. And guess what's going to happen when all the unproductive beggars are left behind? That's when the Democrats or the left, however you want to describe them, that's when they're going to build a wall. It's funny how walls are going to work then, but it won't be to keep out foreign invaders. It'll be to keep you in. Just ask the peoples of East Berlin. Ask the people who are trapped behind the Iron Curtain if walls work. You want to find out? Oh, okay. They're going to build a wall so quick to keep your behind in, because they know that people vote with their feet, as they say, and there'll be no one left in the United States to steal from, no one left in the United States to plunder, nobody left in the United States to force them to work, to feed the political elites who will, when it's all said and done, be worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Say, for example, like the Castro family, right? You'll see how fast they build a wall in. That's it.
You got time to read the rest of these supers, Blanche, or no?
Oh, yeah, I'll read them. I left off on, okay, this is the next one. Derek Perry, thank you. There were actually 5 cities that God would judge. Mm-hmm. Amen. And one more thing. People talk about America getting judged. Like, listen, y'all, the whole world's going to be judged. It ain't just going to be America. Right. Y'all think America got something special laid out for them. The entire planet's going to be judged.
Oh, yeah. Well, once America falls, the whole world is going to go. I'm
It's
telling
gonna be a
you,
wrap anyway. So
it's
it's
going to be a wrap. That's the whole point. That's why the attack is on America, not just so much the soil and the territory itself, but that's why they are attacking our founding values, our founding principles, because it is we, the people, who give those perspectives the power. We animate those ideas. And so they are attacking those ideas because they know once we no longer believe in them, when the society no longer has confidence in itself, and then you flood the country simultaneously with all of these foreigners who are bringing with them their foreign ideas, then the country cannot stand, because it can no longer defend itself, because again, we're in a war essentially of ideas. And this is what the United States stand for. The United States in principle is against this kind of global tyranny, this new world order top-down system that they're trying to implement currently. And that's why they're trying to wipe out the United States. And like Blanchard always says, who you think gonna fight to defend it? All the white folks that they trash, all the white people that they talk about. Because black folks, and they ain't gonna defend nothing.
Right.
So they think it don't apply to them.
Right. Derek Perry, a lot of at the city demonstrated that he was actually an elder of the city. That demonstrates how far Lot fell. But when he saw the angels, he knew what was up, so he tried to protect the city.
Yeah.
We want you. We said, take my daughters, and no, we don't want them. We ain't into that.
Robert Lamoa, who you guys top 3 economists? For me, it's Walter Williams, Milton Friedman, Peter Schiff.
Yeah, I said it in the chat. I said Sol, Freeman, and Mises for me. Even I like Ricardo also, but you know, that's going back a couple centuries. But modern economists, yeah, those would be my 3: Friedman, Sol, and Mises.
Submitted student says Warlock isn't a Christian. He's not spirit-led.
I agree with that.
He's not. Dion, professing DNC Christians are secular humanists and religious drag. Yes.
100%.
Will Doc, thanks for the super sticker. Thanks for making the connection of biblical truth to the deception of these folks for power and hedonism. They're exchanging the truth for a lie, Romans 1.
Yep.
Amen.
Yep.
Derek Perry, as actual pastor, I would rebuke Brian and Warlock to their face. They are heretics and are not Christians. They are teachers described in Jude.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. Jude did warn about the phonies. Yes, he did.
Nadish, please do not attempt to pronounce my names. Thanks for a great show as usual. Nadish Amor.
He gonna do it anyway.
Robert Lamoa, thank you again. Society says try to be the best you can be, but when a business actually makes it, it's you didn't build that and taking them down.
You didn't build that?
Right. Success in theory is acceptable, but not in practice. Yeah.
Remember, y'all, Obama said because the taxpayers paid for the streets that you rode on to get back and forth from work. That was his logic. You use streets paid for by taxpayers to get to and fro. So you didn't build that because you had a street to travel on.
Even though the business could still exist if it was a dirt road, like you could still have a business, like people will still find a way to get to you. Rick Hamsty, great show as always, great chat, family, and God loves you all. Thank you, Rick. I think that's the last one.
Thank you. Thank you all for rocking with us tonight. We're going to do a freestyle episode next week. It's not going to be there's not going to be an exact I guess theme or topic, but just a summation of different clips that I've been collecting over the past year. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that. But anyway, thank y'all for hanging with us tonight. Really appreciate it. The DNC was a mess. It was a doo-doo show. I'm not going to use the S word. And you saw it in the montage. So anyway, what did you think? Please comment in the comment section and let us know. Let us know some other topics that you would like for us to cover. With that, we'll leave you all, and God bless.
Hold on a second. I got one question. If you had to judge the DNC based on the crowd, what would you all say? Like, based on who was in the crowd, What would you all say?
I saw a lot of freaks.
Yo, God.
I saw a lot of weirdos in the crowd. A lot of grade A weirdos.
Misfits, bro. Oh my goodness. Yeah, did y'all see that one guy? I didn't know who he was until I seen this clip going viral. It's funny how a lot of like trolls and stuff snuck inside, and Matt Walsh snuck in. And there was this one YouTuber, this comedian guy. He was going around interviewing all these people. And he was just trolling them the whole time, and they didn't realize that they were being made fun of. And he was acting like this. I mean, he was putting on this little spiel, almost like he was like this gay liberal white guy or whatever. I don't know if y'all seen it. It was so funny, man. And he asked this one lady about conservative men, about something, about how Republican men look better. And this little blonde-haired white lady, she looked young, and she was talking about, yeah, Republican guys are hotter or something like that. Something she was saying. And she said, what are we going to do about that? And he's like, I don't know. Like, the conservative men are better looking, but I don't know. But they're all just, she called them something. Pretty much like, yeah, they look better, but she can't deal with a conservative man because, of course, we're racist or Nazis or whatever word she used to describe them. But it was funny. If y'all haven't seen that little snippet or that, it's about 6-7 minutes long. It's hilarious. I'll probably send it to y'all after the show. Yeah. It was funny.
No, but yeah, just a bunch of grade A weirdos.
Yeah.
Over emotional. I mean, to me, like with the hands raised high and the somber faces, and during certain speeches, to me it reminded me of like of church, really. And again, a lot of these people were looking at the DNC as though it was a religious experience, and I think that says a lot. So yeah. Anyway, I don't know. What is your answer to that question, Blanche?
I mean, I thought the same. I just thought that the crowd was very telling. If you look in the crowd and you scanned it, it was just like Chuck said, like misfits. Just you said weirdos, freak show, and then even the people outside being interviewed, like they all have this distressed look on their face. Like they never look at peace or calm. They're always like I'm like, y'all supposed to be at the DNC and happy. Why y'all look so distressed? Like, I don't know. It's just.
Yeah. But that's the part. But that's what they promote. I mean, especially in the educational system, they want to get to the children, and they kind of force them to have a moment of crises. And then this is a part of the educational literature. I know we'll start a whole nother show, but just briefly, this is what they teach, and this is why these people grow into adulthoods and they can rarely function. Everything triggers them. Everything is like this psychotic episode. They're so neurotic and anxious. Because they've been psychologically abused by not just members of their own family, but especially by educators. And this is the point, because this is key to raising a critical consciousness, because you're supposed to elicit these kinds of feelings into your student body so as to get them to see not just injustice everywhere, but they are to internalize that injustice, because you're supposed to point out to them the racist or bigoted attitudes that they have that they otherwise were unaware of had they not been enlightened by the Gnostic priest, essentially, in the form of the educator. And so once you have that psychological breakdown, that's what indoctrinates you into the cult, because you have to then rely upon the so-called expert to lead you to this promised land, because without them, you can no longer make sense of the world. It turns you insane. And this is why those people look this way. It's just an all-out assault, and it starts when the children are very young.
What a mess!
It's crazy.
Thank y'all for rocking with us tonight. See y'all next week. Appreciate it.
Bedtime.